What's up, Sheldon?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, hey, YouTube guys. We are coming on live here tonight to talk about MWAVE 2023. Sheldon and I both attended the show this year. It's Youthman and Ryan from Ascend Audio's audio video experience show. It was fantastically done. We wanted to kind of share our perspective on it and give some feedback to the community. So we'll make this kind of short and sweet. We don't plan to stay on here very long. But we had a couple little topics we were going to kind of overview and share our opinions. So Sheldon, what would you give the MWAVE as far as like an overall letter score? What's your perspective? Like if you're a school grades, what would you say they earned this year?
Well, I'm a teacher, so used to giving out grades, but a PE teacher, so it's all A's.
So did they earn their A?
They did. They got the PE teacher's A. But no. Even if I was a real teacher, I would have given them an A. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I had a great time. How about you?
Yeah, I would absolutely match that. I was thinking the same thing, like a solid A, not an A minus, not a B plus, a solid A. There was a lot of different experiences, a lot of different vendors there, some great presentations, some good information, great comparisons. Like it was, they knocked it out of the park, man. For their second show, they really did a good job.
Yeah.
Right. So, well, what was your favorite room over the whole time you were there? Like, what
ATR.
was? Why was that your favorite?
You knew that would be the answer, and you know why it's my favorite. No. I've always been a big fan of the high efficiency, super dynamic speakers. I think for home theater especially, but I love them for music too. But you just can't match that, and it's so visceral and so punchy and explosive, and where else can this happen? You go to the back of the room and you talk to Tony and the other guys from JTR. What level was that at? And they were arguing. It was either 8 over reference or 14 over reference. They were doing all the math, so it was somewhere between 8 and 14 over reference, and it's just like, that's bananas, and it's fantastic. And yeah, that was my favorite room. How about you?
Yeah, well, on that same line, when they had the 14 over reference, that's in a giant concrete bunker of a building, and the rooms next door had to come over and tell them to turn it down, I heard. So even with like super thick concrete walls, yeah, that's going through.
Well, that's why they kept doing John Wick on a loop, because it was quick hitting, like instead of the intro of Edge of Tomorrow where it's just, and so they had to kind of pick and choose when they did the longer droning bass stuff, because that made everybody mad. But the quick guns were more doable all day long. But yeah.
I really like the JTR room as well. The Perlisson room was very good, and the SVS room, all three of them really did a great job on a home theater setup. You go to a show like Expona or Rocky Mountain Audio Fest, something like that, you're going to get a lot of 2-channel. But this event was catered to home theater enthusiasts. So you saw a lot of really nice full featured setups, 4 ceiling speakers, 7 bottom layers, 5 in, I think, in the case of SVS. But, really nice setups. A room I really liked was the auto EQ room, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But they had 4 different AVRs in there. It was a 7.2.4 setup. So 4 ceiling speakers, 7 bed speakers, 2 subs.
Right.
2 piles of subs, actually 4 subs, but they could do quick switching with that, which was so cool because they had set up auto EQ on 4 different receivers, and you could just push a button and switch to the next one and hear how that variance happened. And it was probably most revealed in the bass, that kind of thing, more so than the speakers. They were surprisingly closer than I expected, but it was really neat to see that.
That makes me chuckle a little bit that the auto EQ room was your favorite, considering your room uses no auto EQ.
That's right. Well, it's just so cool that I walked in there and I was thinking, how are you doing this? I don't even know how you're doing this, because I've never heard of a switcher to switch 11 speakers at a time or whatnot, but they had done it with some sort of digital system that they had put together. And that was just excellent. And the other thing that was cool about that is you didn't have to just listen to like the home theater stuff. They could pick a receiver and they could turn like the Marantz DAC on and off, or they could turn, different features of the receiver on and off, and then do an immediate comparison between different receivers with different features too. So it was really excellent in that regard.
Well, let me ask you this. The Dirac Live, did that have the new art, the new ART
It did have the art.
It did have that.
Yes, and
Okay.
multiple rooms had it. In fact, JTR's room was using art, and I'm not sure if Perlisten was using art or not, but certainly the Auto EQ room had an art illustration going. Unfortunately, for me, when we were comparing art on and art off, I couldn't hear very much difference. And I think it's because the room was already so big and there wasn't a whole lot of weird things happening in the room. Like there was plenty of room between the boundaries from the speakers, and the subs were corner loaded. So you really didn't have a whole lot of like unoptimizations or room problems to deal with. Like it was a pretty ideal room, almost like out in open space, you know, like if you were out in a field or something, because it's such a long, huge ceilings and everything. That art didn't have a whole lot to correct.
I kind of wondered that too. Sorry, go ahead. I cut you off there.
If it did anything, it seemed to clean up the bass a little bit, make the bass a little tighter on some of the stuff as we were playing through the different materials. So it was a subtle effect. It was almost to the point of being somewhat imperceivable, but you could pick it up, and that's what multiple people in the audience kind of heard. Like, seems to tighten up the bass a little bit. There's not as much ringing on a longer bass note. It seems to stop a little quicker.
Right. And I bet you, or at least I wonder, if we were in like a small, because these rooms, like you say, were huge.
Mm-hmm.
If this was like a hotel room, you know, a smaller room, I bet it would make a more significant difference. But I don't know. That's just a guess. But so when I listened to the 4, I was in there when they were doing the demo. What's it that has the bird flying around? I can't remember the name of it. Amaze.
Yes.
Right? The Amaze demo. Did you hear that one? Was
that one wasn't played when I was in there? I missed it.
Okay, so they did that one, and they did it over and over again, and just switched between the 4 different types of room EQ. You know, and you just kind of think about which one you like the most. Honestly, 3 of them sounded very, very similar to me, and then one of them sounded very bass weak, and that ended up being Odyssey, which I guess isn't a huge surprise. But I mean, you can turn the bass up from that. So I wonder if the bass had been turned up, would I think all 4 of them would have been fine?
Yeah.
Because the other 3, it was like 1, 3, and 4. I liked all of them, and I didn't really like 2, and it was just because of the bass. So, but like you say, a lot of that could have just been the huge room, and that means everything's going to sound pretty good. So
yeah, like the Auto EQ didn't have a whole lot to do, perhaps. Is kind of the way that I thought of that. There was a funny little test at the end of that with I asked for it by request, the Marantz DAC. You guys have probably for years, if you're active on AVSForum and so forth, heard about how that Marantz sound is something that's worth paying the extra money for Marantz MAME over Denon. And I have noticed that it's very subtle in my own theater as I switch that DAC 1 and DAC 2 filter on and off. So I wanted to see what the audience, there's probably about 12 people in the room or so that were kind of at different seats, what they thought. Like, could I hear it? Would I hear it on a different system? Is it my own system that I don't hear that much difference on? So we started switching it back and forth, and people were kind of raising their hands like, I kind of like this a little better or this a little better, and, you know, starting to kind of cement opinions. So, but it was so subtle that I was kind of like wondering, or is this for real? You know, like when we've done our little amp comparisons in the past, how the more you listen to something, you kind of say, no, I like this setting, and it gets stronger, but do you really know?
And then the guy at the controls like, that was the same amp. Oh, the highs are better on this, but well, that was the same amp.
So I asked Bob, who was running the thing, can you just start switching it without us knowing? Like he was calling out switch, switch, switch. I said, can you just start switching it and not tell us? We won't look at you. You're behind us, and we'll raise our hands when we hear it, and we'll see what happens. Well, he was playing that content for like a minute or two, and nobody raised their hands at all. And then somebody raised their hand at one point, and I was thinking I might have heard it too. So a couple seconds later, I raised my hand, and then it played for a little bit longer, and we started all kind of raising our hands a little bit more. And after the thing, Bob just started laughing, and he's like, I was switching that thing every 8 seconds for the first minute or two. And then I got to talking to someone back here because someone came up and asked me a question. I stopped switching it, and that's when you guys started raising your hand.
I'm not surprised, because when I heard this off and on at your room a while back, I thought I could maybe tell a difference, but I knew I've been at, we've done lots of blind comparisons. I knew that if it were a blind test, I'd probably fail. So I don't think it was
certainly, even if you can hear a difference, it's certainly one of those things where if you left the room and came back in, you'd be at a loss to know which way was playing.
But if you're sitting there in your own room and you're hitting the switch yourself, your brain is going to be like, ooh, that sounds different. That's just so. Then you'll go on the forum. Oh, it's way different. That's how
Yeah.
that works.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of reinforcing or nice to know. And I was one that screwed it up because I raised my hand obviously at the wrong times as well. But
That
it
would
was
have been funny
kind
to see.
of
He's like,
yeah,
I
Bob
haven't
was
even
laughing.
been close to the processors, and you guys are all raising your hands.
And then we did another test, and this one's just as good. I went back and I whispered in Bob's ear as he was switching them. I said, "Stop switching them and just keep announcing that you're switching them like you were before." And we had people listening in the audience saying like, "Oh, I like B the best," or "I like C the best," or whatever for the auto EQ comparison.
Oh,
And so he
okay.
did the same thing. He just stopped
that's
switching them,
cool.
but he was saying, "This is B, this is C." And somebody's like, "Yeah, B's the best. It's clearly the finest." And then Bob was like, "What? I wasn't even switching it anymore," And so there's so much
Yep.
like there's so much placebo effect going on in your mind, especially if you start listening to something, you start developing a rhythm or a precedence. You think like this is the one that I like because there was some sort of maybe there's a chorus or refrain that you're used to hearing. It's a little bit more active part of the song that's now associated with that amp because that was the one that was playing at the time or that EQ, and so that becomes like your favorite and it's locked in. But it's not even really a noticeable difference when you get right down to it. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
The other kind of cool takeaway for me from the auto EQ comparison was in 2014 we did the auto EQ comparison at my room, and we had like 8 different processors, and they were wildly disparate. They were all over the map. We had like a 20 dB swing in reference levels between like the bass and the highs between the
it was ridiculous.
the outskirts. Yeah, there was like no standard. I was really dismayed by that actually. It was bad for our hobby to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, with these 4 processors, granted they're all pretty much in the flagship type lineup, but with these 4 processors, they were much closer, at least audibly. And it's not just audibly, because in that 2014 comparison we did, I remember one of those amplifiers, one of those AVRs sounded like it blew my speakers. Like I almost wanted to like pause the whole show and be like, something blew, something's not right.
I remember that. Yeah.
So much closer with these new products.
Yeah, didn't you think they were very similar?
I did think they were very similar.
Yeah.
And I don't think we had the movie content that you're talking about, but he was playing music through them, and some of it was up mixed music and that kind of thing, and we were getting a feel for it that way. So yeah, it was an interesting room. I would have liked to spend a lot more time in there and to have your hands on those kind of premium layers and be able to like say, Bob, switch this setting. I'm familiar with this one. Turn Dirac on. Turn off Room Perfect. Like all those different things that you can just do on the fly. That's awesome. That was a really great experience in there.
Yeah, that was cool.
So what about your favorite particular demo? Your favorite room was JTR. Do you have a favorite demo scene?
Well, I thought it was John Wick because I saw that many times, and that's one of my favorites to demo over here. But then right at the end of the day, when Jeff was like, they're doing an extreme demo, I'm like, I thought I saw the extreme demo. Like, there's more extreme demo. So I go in. It's a movie I haven't even seen, which I own. I just haven't watched it yet, called Overlord. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it yet.
I've got to watch it because it was like the plane scene when the planes are getting shot up and guys are getting ready to jump out and whatnot. And to me, it was better than the John Wick scene. It was
Wow.
crazy. It was crazy. And if what I heard before was 8 to 14 above reference, I don't even know what that was.
8 to 14. It's so ridiculous to think.
It was like reference squared. Yeah, it was crazy.
You know what I realized too in those demo things is I have kind of a collection of demos that I've curated over time that I like, and I'm way out of date because none of my stuff was on any of these demos that they were doing this weekend. And I was thinking, man, I got to update my list.
But the old stuff holds up, man. I'm telling you.
It does. Some of my stuff's still 5.1 and up mix that I always demo in my theater, and it's still a lot of fun.
And a lot of the older stuff is not filtered, so you don't even
deeper
need
bass,
EQ or anything like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I have some mix. That's not all old stuff, but still to your point, Sheldon, one of my guests said your best demo was the War of the Worlds scene, and that thing's like what 15 years old or something, and it was off of
2004, I think,
off an old DVD,
almost 20 years old.
Yeah.
Oh, you played the DVD version?
Mm-hmm.
You had the beta, the VHS. You're rocking Pro Logic in there.
I might be thinking. Actually, I might have had the Blu-ray on the War of the Worlds. It might be the.
I bet you, because there is a 4K where they neutered the bass a little bit.
I don't have the 4K version. It would be.
Yeah,
the
I bet you did the. I bet you did the Blu-ray, but
yeah. What's that one that's There's a ship battle. What's the name of that one that has the DVD? Yes, the DVD has the best bass on that one. They neutered the Blu-ray version.
and they've never made a 4K. Yeah,
That's right.
So yeah.
Any of the media that you found there that you would include besides Overwatch, or was that the one that was Overlord? That was your favorite?
Overlord is my favorite. I mean, John Wick was fantastic. I think he did the intro to Edge of Tomorrow in the JTR room, which was I thought we were gonna get kicked out, like all of us, maybe arrested. They just take us out. We're violating noise ordinances, but when I went, I don't know how much I should say on this. I'm going to speak my mind a little bit. When I went to the other speaker rooms, it was different to my ears. It wasn't as impactful or exciting. Just kind of didn't do as much for me. It did for you though. It sounds like you enjoyed those other rooms.
It did, and you know, so much of this hobby is subjective preference and just kind of alignment with what your own ears and tastes are. In the JTR room, and I told Tony this, so this isn't any surprise, I would have lowered the bass a couple ticks. I would have lowered the crossover a couple ticks, and I felt like a speaker was left a little hot on the left side. And I told him all those things, and he kind of adjusted that at the time. I think that they did a recalibration to their own preferences again Sunday. So I heard there was a different experience on Sunday than there was Saturday. I was most of my time in JTR on Saturday.
You wanted to lower the bass?
Yeah, a couple ticks. Yeah, yeah. Because, you know, and I kind of explained this to you guys the show.
I would have gone the other way.
See, that's fine. There's no right or wrong. So the way I kind of try to describe it to some people is like, here's your main speakers and here's your subwoofers. And as you elevate this to like plus 15, right? Because that's what they were doing, is getting this sub super hot. Your crossover point that was at 80 hertz, now, because this rolls off like this, has moved up to 150, 180 hertz, right? It's no longer 80 hertz.
Right.
So and as you raise that higher, as you raise that bass higher, that roll off from that crossover intersects with the main speakers at a higher and higher point.
Right.
And so the big problem with just boosting the snot out of your subs is you're muddying that kind of lower bass section to where it's a little bit more of a bloated sound that doesn't have to be there if you just lower
but that's not what they were doing on Saturday.
Or lower the crossover. Go ahead.
That's not what on Saturday. It was just master volume up. It wasn't raising the subs.
No, their subs were absolutely elevated over the main speakers. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But when I'm saying it was above reference, I don't just mean the subs were above reference. It was master volume.
Oh, yeah. But in that same course, to my subjective taste, I would have lowered the subwoofers just a little bit. And I think I've echoed that in my own room setup. Like to me, and this is just personal taste, there's no right or wrong. Because here, Jeff Permanian, the owner of JTR, was standing out in the hallway. And when you're, an internet direct person, the people don't necessarily even know who you are. He said there was 2 guests that walked out back to back. And he said one guest said there was not nearly enough bass in there. He should have had the bass louder. And the very next guest on the person's heels was telling his wife there was so much bass in there I couldn't stand it. So there's no perfect answer. This is going to be a subjective preference to some degree, but my subjective preference would be a little bit less bass in the JTR room. I thought the per listen room was perhaps a little bit less balanced. I prefer the JTR speakers over the per listen speakers from what I heard in those rooms. But I was actually really pleasantly surprised by the SVS room. Small speakers, 2 subs. They had it really well balanced. They weren't trying to shoot for the moon with the bass, and it sounded really solid. Like, again, subjective preference, in my opinion. And I know JTR speakers are super capable. We've both heard them in a lot of different rooms. They make some of the best systems I've ever heard. Yes, like, period. End of story. Some of the best presentations I've ever heard. SVS was a more balanced presentation at this particular meet, in my opinion. JTR was knock your socks off, grin ear to ear, solid, like really, really cool. But I as I've gotten a little older and maybe don't need as much bass as I used to, I've sort of been dropping my subwoofer level over the years, and I'm
Oh, you have.
Yes, I am. I used to be harder than I am now. Now I'm like 9 on movies. I used to be like 15 on movies. So certainly I've dropped like 60.
Oh, well, I might be below you. For all my demos, I was between 6 and 8. And then for the Hans Zimmer, I was at like almost flat, like maybe 3 at the most, because that's kind of bass hot. Yeah. So you were hotter than I was then on those.
We'll see. There you go.
Interesting.
Yeah. I just feel like as what I've started to do is as I'm getting a little bit more time in this hobby over the years, I've started dialing up the tactile transducers a little bit and dialing down the overall bass levels a little
bit. Well, I've dialed down the bass and I've had to dial way down on the tactile. I was off the charts. Yeah, they were so much fun when I first got them, and yeah, I've turned those way down. But
yeah, so
yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. All three rooms were absolutely spectacular, and the JTR room was absolutely spectacular. But I'm more of a I like a more of a balanced sound, perhaps nowadays, a little bit more than I used to. I mean, I've been around the block a few times.
When were you in the JTR room? What was
a lot Saturday? A lot Saturday.
Yeah, I was in there. That's how we started our day. I brought a good friend. We started in there, and then we went next door and we did the other speaker demos right after that. And to us, it was like a huge difference, let's say.
Sure.
Parsing my words a little bit. We enjoyed the JTR demo a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nothing. I have no complaints about JTR. Subjective taste a little bit here or there. Okay. Any surprises that you thought were worth bringing up?
I mean, I guess I wasn't surprised that the massive Martin Logan sounded great. As my good buddy I brought there was like just floored, and I was like, well, hang on a second. They're playing Keith Don't Go.
Sounds good on an AM radio.
Yeah, this would sound good on a clock radio. That's what I told him. Like, so you got to be careful.
Yeah.
But it did sound fantastic. Did you go in there and listen to the Martin Logan?
Only briefly, because those things cost as much as my house. So I was like,
yeah,
nah, I don't need to stay here.
Yeah.
But it was and I heard them last year, or even maybe a higher model last year at MWAVE, and they have a gorgeous sound. It's a neat presentation.
Yeah, very especially different when you're right in the sweet spot. Yeah, it was really nice.
Did you see the boxes those things came in, just by the way? Because as we were loading those things in the truck in the night, we had 4 guys on each side trying to lift one side of it. 4 big guys, 250, 300-pound guys on each side of that box. It was a giant wooden coffin. Just to like get the forklift underneath it. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
Hey, this is why Ryan's moving. It's our room that can fit those in there. That's what's happening.
Anyway, there's a couple of those things, and the guys that were helping load those on the truck, I said, look, if there's a point that the speaker gets too big, this has crossed the line. This is absurd to have a box that's like a Sphinx coffin or something in there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, they sounded good. I didn't spend a whole lot of time in that room. What about any other surprises for you?
Surprises. No, I don't know about surprises.
Okay.
Not too much. Yeah.
I missed this, but this would have been fun to attend. They did a speaker wire comparison. Did you hear how that turned out?
Man, I already know how it would turn out. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Especially did they do it blind?
They did it blind.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Someone had created a lazy Susan, and they put speakers on there, 4 identical speakers, and wired them up with, I think it was, I don't remember the exact number, but thousands of dollars speaker wire, like 5,500 or something speaker wire. Yeah. And then they used monoprice 14 gauge copper. And then they had some sort of mid-gauge wire. Like I think the high-end wire had a battery in it, even like to remove distortion or something. The cheapest wire was coat hanger, like literally just coat hanger that was cut and taped together.
I was lamp wire.
I brought lamp wire, but they didn't use that. Any rate, nobody could hear a difference is what the story was. And a couple of people thought they could, but they didn't really know what they were hearing anyway. So then somebody comes in. I won't give his name on this because I don't want to
You're a better man than me.
I don't want to make someone squirm a little bit here, but somebody come in and said,
nobody's going to watch this, Jonathan. Nobody. Kidding.
Somebody came in and said, look, you're not doing this right. You need to listen to white noise. If you listen to white noise, you'll be able to tell any difference in EQ. And if there's any time of change, you'll be able to hear it immediately. And like,
that's
so
my
they put on
white noise. I love sitting in the sweet spot listening to white noise all night.
So they put on white noise, and nobody could tell the difference again. So you got your 55. I don't even know. I'm gonna say
pink. Pink noise. That would have been
$5,500 speaker cable, and you got your coat hangers, and everyone was like, "Huh, that's interesting." So,
I could have told you how that would turn out.
So Ryan said that he's going to go ahead and do that again for the Kansas City crowd because not everybody got to attend, and there was a couple Kansas City guys who were like, "I could have told those guys couldn't really. Those people must not have heard." But it's going to be funny to see that in person, kind of like our amp comparison we did a few years ago.
Yeah. And I don't want to sound arrogant about that. I just thought we were to the point where it's kind of understood that it doesn't matter.
Well, so I think here's the deal. That stuff will show up on a scope. Like, you got ASR level equipment with an oscilloscope and you're reading it with an engineering degree and everything. It's going to show up on a scope. Our ears just aren't that sensitive. We just don't have that hearing capability at that fine degree of that scope level. So that's kind of where that pans out.
Same thing with interconnects. Unless you're getting noise or something, I don't know.
Sure.
I've done too many blind things to, I'm jaded.
All right. So what about the projector comparison? Did you spend any time in that room?
Lots of time. I was probably very obnoxious in that room, and I didn't mean to be, but you were in there when I was.
I was in there for a little while. Were you in there? That's funny.
Yeah. So we came in the morning. That's when you weren't there, and it was like the JVC, in my opinion, was destroying the Sony. It was like they did the NZ7 and the NZ9 versus whatever Sony, and it was like, and my buddy too was like, this isn't close. I mean, because the brightness level was so much better on the JVCs. Came back after lunch when you were there, and we're like, what is happening? Why does the Sony look just as bright but sharper? I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, they had the Nick had the JVC HDR setting set to normal and not wide. So it cuts down so much on the brightness. And then when he switched it back to wide, it was like, okay, there's the advantage again. But the Sony does do sharpness better. Now, that advantage, a lot of that advantage went away when the JVC went back to its brighter setting, because brightness affects sharpness a lot, at least to my eyes. But not totally. I'd still say the Sony beats it on sharpness. And on that sliding scale, I know the default was 20. When you accidentally had it at 50 and didn't know, I preferred that.
I kind of did too. I'm kind of a digital sharpening guy myself.
I was digging that fake sharpness.
Yeah. Well, it didn't even just seem like it was only sharpness, man, because if you remember like that Spears and Munsell disc with the buffaloes on the shoreline or whatever, there's a creek or river running through there. It looked like it was adding dirt. I'm like, how this is changing the picture? It's not even this. Are we on the same frame here? What's happening? It was kind of
when the JVC was still on the wrong setting. Well, wrong. That's an arrogant.
You mean the wide versus auto wide? Is that what you mean?
It was on normal instead of wide. For the HDR.
For those that might not be familiar with that setting, can you describe that a little bit in more detail on the JVC?
So I'm a man of limited knowledge. I just know that when you go wide, it's brighter. And so JVC did a firmware upgrade, I don't know, half a year ago, maybe longer, that changed the default setting from that normal to, maybe it didn't, or you had to select it yourself. But when everybody changed it, they're like, ooh, that's better. Kind of like when they went to level 3 on laser dimming versus level 1 or 2, they thought, ooh, that's better. Although I still like level 1, but that's just me. So it was still in that dim, quote unquote, dim setting when you were seeing the horses in the snow and the extra trees and extra dirt and all the stuff that you were talking about. But
I think it's some sort of gamma manipulation, right? Because I think people were kind of complaining that the overall brightness level on the JVC was a little lower than people like. So they just boosted the overall screen when you go to the overall brightness when you go to that auto wide, and it does seem to add quite a bit of more low level light detail.
Yeah, and when you run it that way, I thought it wasn't close. I would definitely take the JVC over the Sony. But man,
you're kind of cutting out there, Sheldon.
The JVC's black levels and more brightness. Oh, can you hear me?
You're cutting out. No, and now your lips are off. All right. Yeah, I think you're back. Go ahead. Repeat your statement.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Am I good?
You're
Okay.
good.
So if you could somehow combine the JVC's better black levels and brightness with the Sony's sharpness and motion, or the Epson's motion, that'd be awesome. But you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
So what did you you kind of said what you thought, but what did you?
Yeah. So on one thing I noticed, I mean, I'm just kind of going back to that Spears and Munsell thing, and it had like those little plants with the little, I don't know, the little berry things on the top. They're probably like thistles or something, right? And at one point, those things got so artificially sharpened that they were like, they look like some sort of modern art or something, you know, like a stamp or something instead of a real life flower. It's pretty odd. So you can definitely go too far with that reality creation engine. But if you found the right setting, I think that'd be better than anything JVC has out of the box, because those sliders on the JVC sharpness don't seem to do a whole heck of a lot.
No, I learned that because I still have my old Epson, and for watching like Chiefs games, I can't get the sharpness how I like it as much on the JVC as I can on the Epson.
Yeah. My takeaway from the projector comparison, I was kind of explaining this to some guys in the room, is there isn't a perfect projector. They all have their own little attributes, and so you kind of pick what you think the most important attribute is and go for there. You know my own saga, and we don't even agree on this, and that's fine. You like the JVC better than the Epson LS12000, and I like the Epson LS12000 better than the JVC. We both owned them both. We both had the NZ7 and the LS12000, and we both picked our champion. Yep, and we both could spend time comparing the room. I've compared them for the last year in my room, and every time I walk away liking the Epson LS12000 better. The JVC has the no holds barred best black levels at dim scenes. So if you're going to watch something like Game of Thrones with a couple nits on the screen, or you're going to watch something like The Witcher 3 or Amazon and The Expanse, and that's your style of movie, and you want to have those dark scenes represented the best they can with the best color reproduction, there's color in some of those scenes that's not even showing on a projector that has too high bright levels or black levels. The JVC is your person, your go-to. I don't think that's the case on most of the content I watch. It might be a scene in a movie instead of the majority of content I watch. I find the Epson. I'll finish and then I'll let you go. I find the Epson to be a little bit brighter. I find the motion to be much more pleasing to me with the Epson, with the frame interpolation on low. That's definitely my favorite. I don't think JVC has any candle to hold to the Epson on the motion. And then I think that the HDR is good enough on the Epson to make me happy. And I like the digital sharpness that the Epson has, much like I like the Sony's digital sharpness over the over the JVC's more film-like image. So to me, and I also like gaming quite a bit better on the Epson than the JVC. The JVC makes you turn all the nicety features off in order to enjoy gaming.
Low latency.
Yeah, when you enter low latency mode, it takes off all the things that make the JVC shine. Like it disables them. Epson, you don't have to disable anything when you're in gaming mode. It's faster than the JVC, and it has better. Let me put it to you this way: when you play a game with the JVC and you're driving a car and there's a telephone pole that goes by, with the JVC there will be 3 telephone poles that go by because it doesn't render it quite right. Like they're not a single pole that's going by. I don't know what causes that. I'm not an engineer. I don't understand it, but I just notice it. On the Epson, when a telephone pole goes by, it's one telephone pole. So if you're into 120 hertz gaming, like Tim, you know Stitch One from the forums, he was over here. He said, I would buy the Epson for gaming even if the prices were reversed. Like he says it's that much better. They're better. The Epson's better for gaming. So for all the bullet points that I more care about, I'm for the Epson. Now, if you care mostly about the dark scenes or whatever else, maybe you even like a more film-like presentation. You don't like the digital sharpness, as Nick always says. He can't stand frame interpolation. He can't stand digital sharpening. He wants it to be a smooth film-like image. He's all about JVC. It's okay. These are just different projectors. They have different strengths, and you pick the one that works for the characteristics you want. Go ahead.
I agree with everything you said. When I had the Epson in here and compared both of them, and I wanted the Epson to win, I liked all the stuff that you're saying about it. The only thing that's different is I must watch it feels like every show that my wife and I watch in lots of movies has a ton of scenes and they don't have to be super dark, but just that more contrast level that you get. And it could be because the whole front of my room is velvet. I don't know. But it was such a bummer because I wanted to keep the Epson, but it was the dark levels that did it. But yeah, motion's better on the Epson. I'm blanking on all the other things that are better, but basically, honestly, everything was better. Okay, sharpness. Yeah, you could get better sharpness, which I love, but it was just the contrast. And I'd had the JVC for over a year, so I'd gotten used to it. And like I say, we must watch different content, because you're talking about The Expanse and a couple other shows. To me, it's The Expanse, Game of Thrones. Like every single thing we watch has those kinds of scenes in it. It seems like so.
I would agree they have those scenes in it, but it's not the majority of content most of the time. And when it's the Epson 12,000 looks better than anything you've ever seen in a commercial theater, in my opinion. And so there's a good enough factor.
Oh, agreed, for sure.
For me, that the black levels are good enough on the Epson and everything else is superior. That's my opinion. Now, one thing that Nick said, Sir Master, who was running this calibration, he said, look, to me, and this is his perspective, everything else is good enough on both these projectors, and the differentiating, because they've all achieved, like, here's perfect, here's good enough, and here's most things. I'm already at the good enough level on everything except for black levels. He said, I want better black levels on all projectors, and the best black level is JVC. And so that's why he says, like everything else meets the threshold except for black level. So he's going to go with he's going to pick the one that has the best weakness. I understand that logic. I understand that. But I don't think it represents the majority of content I watch, so I'm not on board with it.
Yeah, it'd be stupid to argue. It'd be stupid to argue with you about it, because you've had both projectors in your room for over a year.
Yeah,
so
and I too used the JVC for a year. Yep, exactly. Yeah. I too used the JVC for a year, the NZ7 for a year before I bought the Epson. I wasn't ever 100% happy with the JVC. Like it was an improvement in some ways, but not on all ways for my 5040, I thought. So then I got the LS 12,000 just to experiment with, and I was like, I like this better. It didn't take me very long to figure that out, and then it just stayed that way. So I'm not telling anyone that they're right or wrong for liking different projector. I'm just saying there's not only one type of projector in the game. The common adage on the forums, and I've said this before on Youth Band's podcast, the common adage on the forum is buy a JVC if you want a new projector, and if you can't afford a new JVC, buy a used JVC. And I don't agree with that. I don't think that that's right anymore. Anyway, the LS 12,000 is a stellar candidate. Costs half as much as the JVC. It's worth hearing about.
It's not even close. Best bang for the buck is the Epson 12,000 laser. It's not even a contest, in my opinion, from everything that I have seen. So yeah, that room was awesome. Comparing everything back and forth, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, that was actually one of my favorite rooms. I had a good time in there.
Yeah, and Nick would let you have the remote controls, which was nice too. As long as you didn't touch the gamma, the calibration they'd done, you could mess with sharpness, you could mess with the motion, you could mess with that kind of stuff and see what you like, frame interpolation, see what you liked.
So and I told Nick later, I'm like, I'm sorry if, people, I was being pushy with, hey, put this on, put that on. He's like, no, that's what I'm there for. I had a good time. So yeah, I felt good that he did not care about people kind of, asking him to constantly make changes.
Yeah. And how cool was it that it was such an instant comparison, because all the projectors running all the time. So Nick's running around flipping up the little postcard, if you will, the cardboard postcard before each thing, and it's instant on and off comparison. Like you want to see something, boop, it's on. He was flipping stuff so fast you didn't even know it was on at any given time. He was just running around like a little puppet back there flipping those things. It's really cool.
That was super cool.
Yeah. All right. What about the subwoofer comparison? Did you get to participate in that on, I think it was Saturday?
I did. When I went in, my buddy, I'm like, you got to get one of these front row seats. So we sat in one of the back row seats for the first go around. And I was like, get up there. People, now's your chance. Get in there. Because that was a pretty popular room, at least in the time we were in. So I just kind of stood off to the side. Having done blind sub comparisons before, I was kind of like, I've kind of been there before and done that. So I wanted him to kind of, be able to do that. He's a big Arendelle fan. Those same speakers that you have right now upstairs. And I really like him in his room. They are good. And that was one of the subs, if I'm not mistaken, that was used in that. So, no, that was really cool. And it was like coming home. It was such a good feeling when I looked at the chair and it had the hover boss, hover easy, however they did it behind. And it looked just like how my chairs would look if I weren't covering them in velvet. I'm like, hey, that's what I have at home. So that was really cool, sitting next to the near field sub. I didn't get a chance to sit up there and do that. Did you?
I didn't get to sit in the transducer shootout, but I think they actually had to cancel that. It was intended to be on Sunday afternoon, and one of the processors that was running in one of the rooms died, and so they they basically donated that processor from that room into the other one. So maybe it got kicked off for a little while. I didn't make it in there if it was for the transducer setup.
Oh shoot, that's too bad.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are looking forward to it. That's kind of a bummer.
Okay.
I did listen to this. Oh, go ahead.
You and I had this conversation late Saturday, how tough it is to dial in the tactile transducer type of stuff, and take some time. You have to have the negative delay and get that all set up. I don't want to scare people away, but it does take some trial and error to make sure you get the timing, the hit of the bass just right. Whereas with a near field sub, there is greater room for error, and you can miss by a little bit and still be okay.
That's right. Yeah. So it reminds me, in one of the rooms, one of the vendors was saying, like, look, if you want to feel tactile bass, don't even buy a transducer. You can't get it right. I've been in this hobby for 26 years. He says, you can't get it right. He said, you want to have bass? He lifted up the curtain. He said, you need these. And it was pointing to a subwoofer. I was thinking, well, that's kind of sad because that's not true. A demo over at Sheldon's house or at my house would tell you that that's not true in a heartbeat. You can dial in those transducers. As Sheldon just mentioned, you need negative delay for the butt kickers to react properly, and for some others as well. In my room, I need about 7 milliseconds of negative delay. And if you don't have it, if you're just running the butt kicker or the transducer off your receiver, you're never going to be able to get it right. And I've talked about this on one of the Youth Men podcasts, so we won't spend a lot of time on it. But the way that I accomplish that is my near field subs that are right here. I run those through a mini disc P-off subwoofer channel 2. I put an 8 millisecond delay on those near field subs, and I run the butt kickers off that same channel. And then I remove almost all of that 8 millisecond near field delay so that the butt kickers fire before the near field subs. And then we've talked about this too before, Sheldon. Those butt kickers are so sensitive to exact timing that it needs to be within about 1/100th of a second. You go up 1/100th of a second or you go down 1/100th of a second and it doesn't feel right. And to your point, you mentioned this as well. The acoustic energy on the back of that subwoofer, you can mess with that quite a bit. It has a lot more tolerance. It'll feel good with a lot larger range. But those physical giant pistons that are slugging around inside that butt kicker, they need to be spot on. And that's why that vendor didn't think that those could be used right, but it's not true. You absolutely can get them dialed in to where they're imperceivable from the acoustic energy, and they add to it, and it's wonderful. And so I wish that if they had gotten to do the transducer comparison like they had intended, it was going to be a difficult ask to get all that dialed in so fast because the show has limited setup time and everything, and it's such a precision process that takes a long time of tinkering to get it right, and a lot of different music, because you might think this song is it, like I'm listening to Billie Jean or something from, one side of track versus a dubstep thing. They'll have a little bit different timing. You kind of got to average that a little bit sometimes, or change your crossover points to make it work. Your filters, Butterworth 6 dB, Butterworth 12 dB, that kind of stuff. Fiddle with all that. I'm probably using terms some of our audience doesn't understand, but it really requires a lot of setup time, and you can make it right if you spend the time.
Yeah, and not to scare people off, it's not impossible. It's just listening and changing and going back and forth until it hits it, and it's worth it. It's so, I don't care how long it takes you to dial it in. It's so worth it. So
Tony and I were doing some experimentation with this one, Moonfall, just on Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday night right before they left.
Yeah, I was going to do a demo on that.
And he wanted to compare what the near field felt like with the butt kicker. And we'd done some of that experimentation with my old chairs when I had 3 different types of tactile transducers. And we came to the same conclusion last night. Look, each one of these tactile transduction adds something to the equation. Each one is good, and together they're all better. So when we did near field subs, I have my near field subs running full range behind me with no EQ. They're just getting the full signal. And so you get more of an overall full feel. And I have my butt kickers starting at like a 42 hertz with a low pass filter. So that's it's attenuating everything above 42 hertz. The butt kickers can give you more of a violent like shake, and the acoustic energy from the near field is more of like a natural feel. They both feel good solo, and they feel absolutely stellar apart. I mean, it's like chef's kiss.
Together.
It's just wonderful.
Together, you mean?
Yes. Yes. I'm sorry. Together, they just complement each other so well when you get that dialed in real good.
You definitely have. When we were over there, a few days ago, it's spot on. It's perfect.
I'd like to do another video with you about talking about tactile transducers, because I know you've done a whole lot with like the Boss, different types of things, and the hover bosses and the risers and Krausens and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you just got a lot of experience in that realm and can talk to it. So it'd be nice to do something like that sometime here soon.
Sure.
So we talked about the speaker wire competition. Let's talk about any advice for the hosts of MWAVE, Ryan and Michael, next year. Do you have any things that you would say you should try to do this, or maybe include this or change that?
I don't have a lot of experience with these shows. Like when you guys would road trip it up to Expona, I never made it. I haven't been to Rocky Mountain. So this is my first show. So I thought it was fantastic.
I did too.
I don't have a lot of constructive criticism. I don't know. It was better than I thought it was going to be, and I thought it was going to be pretty good. So I know little inside baseball, we just got off the phone with those two, and they're talking about getting a different venue with smaller rooms next year as this thing just continues to grow. I think that's a good idea, because these vendors had to bring so many subs, you know, to
fill the space.
To fill up the space. So, but obviously they've already thought of that thing. That was one of the things I was kind of thinking of, but I don't know. I'm kind of
on that point. Did you get a chance to go into the stereo integrity and deep sea sound room?
Oh yeah. Yep. Talked to David for a long time in there.
Yeah. That was pretty fun. So they had those 24 inches firing from both companies. And Randy Bessinger and I from the forums, we went and sat down right in front of the 24, and you got a near field experience on that organ song that has like the really deep notes, and it's making your shirt do this, and it's just one. Even that giant airspace, man. Even that giant airspace. In fact, we kind of laughed because we went over and looked at the top of the subs, and the subs had ceiling dust on them. So even in that huge like 20-foot tall room by 60-foot long, they're knocking drywall dust off the ceiling in the commercial place. It's pretty fun.
That was impressive. Yeah, for sure. And those subs are beautiful.
Aren't they?
Yeah, I told him, like, what is it? Is this the Funk Audio Room? What's going on in here? Yeah, those were nice. And then the coffee table with the mirror,
the end table thing. Oh yes.
Yeah,
I think so too. Really good.
Beautiful. It reminded me of back in the day with your Ottoman sub.
My college days.
Oh yeah.
415s and an Ottoman. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I hate that we're not speaking to all the rooms, but I really didn't spend that much time in a room that I didn't talk about on this little podcast here. So if we're leaving a vendor off, it's not because it was intentional. It's because we were caught up in talking to a lot of people and making connections with old friends and stuff. And
that was my most favorite part, was talking to people and socializing with, you know, meeting new people or people that came through our demos or that kind of stuff. Part of me thought it would be kind of cool. Not that I would prefer this at all, but it would have been kind of cool to like have also not known anyone, because I could have gone to rooms a little bit more easy.
In stealth. Next year you're gonna wear a low hat with sunglasses.
But I wouldn't want that at all, because that was my favorite. Just standing out in the hallway and talking to groups of people that are, you know, that you're meeting or good buddies that you've known for a while was super fun. So. And I was glad to see the old KC crew showing up, quite a few of us.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, and the other thing that we were told, there wasn't that many guys from Kansas City. There were some of the old guard, but a lot of visitors came from all over the country. I mean, Michael said there's someone from Hawaii, someone from Canada. They represented like Maine and Wisconsin and
Utah.
I mean, just everywhere. License plates, people driving in for our VIP tours that we gave on Thursday were from all over the place. They were from distance.
Yeah, one of the guys from Utah, from Salt Lake, he was in the Platinum tour group. He showed me pictures of what he's doing in his room, and he's got Martin Logan's that look to, you know, the Wisdom line array.
Yes.
Super expensive stuff. He's got stuff that looks just like that to me, but it's Martin Logan. I didn't even know Martin Logan made that kind of thing.
I think that Martin Logan had something like that at last year's MWAVE that was set up in a hallway, and it was sounding good. Everyone was enjoying it.
Yeah. And he's like, if you're ever out here, you know, come on over. So,
yeah. Tell me a little bit about your VIP host demos. How'd that go?
Oh, it was so much fun. So it always stresses me out so much, because you're talking about how different people, the JTR room, oh, that was too much bass. That was not enough bass. So as you're setting up your demos, you're like trying to find the right amount of master volume, plus how hot to run the subs, plus how hot to run the tactile stuff. And it's like you drive yourself crazy. I drive myself crazy.
Sure.
But once it's all done and they're in here, it was a blast. Had a lot of fun. They seemed to really enjoy it. Super glad I did it. The time flew by. It was a lot of fun. So glad I did it.
What was your ratio of music to movies? Were you mostly one or the other?
Well, I did quite a few concert things. Like, so let's see, the first music thing I did was the end of the Hobbit second movie. It's and I don't know the style of music, so I didn't know who this was until after the fact, but I just heard it before and remembered it. It's Ed Sheeran, and I've heard that name. It's not my style of music, but it's at the end of Desolation of Smog after he's flying over the city. And
I played that same clip. We did have a little overlap.
Oh, we did.
We did. We both played that clip.
All right. Well, no wonder the second group said, "Well, this sucks," because I saw it.
No, come on.
Go ahead and go to the next one. Oh, that's good. I thought we did everything different.
I thought we didn't have any overlap, but we did there.
But isn't that great? That's
No.
I don't even like that music, but that song gives me goosebumps. I'm like, I'm not supposed to like this. Where's the distortion electric guitar and the thrash metal? But I still like it. So I did that for music. Then I did the Hans Zimmer Gladiator song, and then the one after that is the Tom Hanks movie that isn't all that good, but the music's good. Da Vinci Code.
Mm-hmm.
Those two from that disc. I did my first group. I did a outdoor venue in Greece. That's really cool. It was an acoustic set by the Scorpions. I don't know if you're familiar.
I haven't even heard that one. I know I know of the Scorpions. I don't think I could name a song, but I'd probably recognize the song.
What's weird about the Scorpions is they're not the Scorpions. It's just Scorpions, which is hard to say. But you always want to say the Scorpions. But anyway, I'll show it to you next time you're over here. It's pretty cool. Right. But before I did Scorpions, I had done the Ed Sheeran, then I did the Hans Zimmer, and I did something else. And I was like, and none of this is my style. And somebody was like, "What's your style, opera?" So that was the perfect time to put in Metallica, Through the Never, the song One, where all the bombs and missiles are going off, and then the song One from Metallica. Yeah. I'd say it was about 2/3 movies and 1/3 music. I love the demos that you've picked because you went through them all, when I was over there, and pretty unique stuff. And the one with they shoot all the little things off the drums, and the girls are dancing and trying to hit the drums.
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I love that one.
That's a really old. It's only in 5.1, but it holds up really well when you upmix it.
It's in your room. It sounds like it's beyond Atmos. It's like something people don't even know about. Like it's a new. That's crazy that's 5.1. It really is. That just shows you that you can have 5.1 and have it be amazing. I assume you had the upmixer. That was with the.
Oh yeah,
was that the Neural X or Dolby?
No,
DSU?
I use Dolby Surround. For everything.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm not gonna say that. If it's a DTS core, it'll upmix automatically. I do whatever native upmixer it is to go to the native upmixer for that.
But you could switch if you wanted.
I can, yes. Denon and the Marantz lets you switch it. I think I tried that for a while, but I ended up going back to just doing it the native plus their own upmixer. But as a general rule, plenty of time playing with music, Dolby Surround's my upmixer of choice. Absolutely, for 2-channel stereo for sure.
For music, not even close. DTX sounds weird on 2
does weird things. So I sit right by, let's see if I can point over here. I sit right by this speaker because it's right over my desk, right? And if I'm listening to 2-channel stereo music with DTSX, there's weird stuff happening right there out of that speaker. You listen to Dolby Surround and it's all just blended nicely. Like I can sit here totally off axis from my home theater and it sounds great. And DTSX is like making vocals every once in a while come through like super loud and weird sounds popping through there and stuff. No thanks.
But does it do that on movies? Because I kind of like the DTS upmixer on movies, even though there's music in movies. So it doesn't.
I can't say that I've ever really sat here and listened to a DTSX movie because I'd be over there watching a movie. But I listen to music a lot doing this.
Yeah. Interesting. So I know your demos. But you can speak on it. It was like. Was it like half and was it half and half? You did a lot of spatial.
The first group I did almost all. I did mostly music. We did a couple hours worth of music, and then we went to about an hour of content or movie content. In the second group, I split it more evenly. Yeah, I mean, I did mostly older clips, as I kind of mentioned earlier. Some of them weren't even Atmos. Some of them were just 5.1 tracks, just stuff that's been really neat over the years. Like I said, I got a little bit envious of some of the tracks that were there at the meet. I need to update my list a little bit because like the Batmobile scene that SVS played in that room, that was phenomenal. I didn't hear that played in any other room, but
that
it was
was one of
phenomenal
my
in this room.
demos. I did that one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I need to make a clip of that one.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, we have some questions in the chat here, so let me see if I can pull some of these up. We have
somebody's watching, Jonathan.
Yeah, there's 10 times. We said there'd be about 3 people watching. There's 36 watching this. So
hey, all right.
All right. Let's see if I can find some questions here. So here, this guy, Gene Splicer, says both your theaters had me grinning. Guys, lit the fire to get my theater built.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, very good. Glad we were inspiration there.
Oh, thanks.
So
thanks. Yeah.
He's got a question for you. I'll let you go ahead and read it out and answer it.
Okay, it says you told me you had a Panamorph lens for your at your JVC at one point, but it finished at the corners of your screen. You think you might go back with it if you had the Mad VR Envy, as it can fix it. I mean, probably. The thing, Mad VR Envy, I don't even know if I want to see what it can do. Part of that's why I didn't go back Sunday, because I
wanted to keep your pocketbook intact, huh?
Yes. Yeah, it probably could fix it. Man, I don't know. So it was super nice just to hit one button and have it switch from 16:9 ratio to 235:1 or 239:1, whatever. That was awesome. I love that. But I don't know. Once I didn't have the lens anymore, I didn't think about it anymore, and I didn't really care that much. So I don't know how big of a deal it was to me to have the lens. Did I even tell you about that, Jonathan? Like 6 months ago? Yeah, I bought that, and it was so close to working. If I moved back my projector probably 6 inches, it would have worked. But it wasn't worth it to me to even do that. But if it had worked without moving the projector, I would have kept it.
Now, did you see the pincushion distortion on the anamorphic lens you had that they talk about?
Yeah,
explain that to the audience here.
Yeah, so the group asked, I think that was the second group that asked about that. So when you use the panamorphic lens, you're going to get a little bit of pincushion, meaning the center of the screen is going to be the border of the center of the screen is going to be closer, and as you go to the outside, it kind of flares up a little bit. And so the way you compensate for that is just zoom out to make the image a little bit bigger. And it was very, very slight. It wasn't enough that would have been a deal breaker at all. And that's what Brandon told Beast Audio. That's what he told me, because I was getting all my advice from him when I was getting that. And he was right. You could see it a little bit when you had like the pattern up there. But when you were watching content, you couldn't tell at all.
What about when you were using like your browser? I know you like to browse AVSForum and so forth when you're using your PC on your projector.
Yeah, I could see it a little bit. That's true. And that right as you said, and that's because that's what I have up.
Right. That'd kill me. I wouldn't accept that on my browser experience, I think. If you could see it with that.
And I know what you're saying. It would have been, what would it, about an inch on the side? I can't even remember, but it would have been enough that you would have been able to notice on a browser. So yeah, and it depends. And it depends on how far back your throw is. The closer your throw is to maximal brightness, like the closest it can be, the more that pincushion effect you get. The further back it is, the less you get. At least that's what I understand. I'm pretty sure that's what Brandon told me. I hope I'm not messing up what he said. Does that sound right?
I don't have enough experience with Anamorphic.
I don't want to say something wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what he said. So, yeah.
All right. Very good. So we got somebody saying they also saw ceiling dust falling off in the JTR room. Man, when you can make ceiling dust fall off in a room that big, it's just insane. It's just insane.
That's fun.
Yeah. And you know, the thing is, like, to the person who came out of the JTR room, remember I told that story earlier in the podcast saying that someone came out and said there's way too much bass. Someone else came out and said there wasn't enough bass just back to back. You put those types of subwoofers in a residential environment, a small home theater room, and you will literally knock drywall off the wall. We saw it over at Doug's house.
Well, yeah, it untwists the screws.
He had just finished that basement. Were you over there at that time when we did that? It was 2017 crawl, I think. Do you remember
No,
that?
I was doing demos too, and so I think I had a group here while that was going on. But the stories are so legendary that I've retold it, so I feel like I was there. So at some point, I'm just gonna start lying and say that I watched the crew come out, and we all had to get screwdrivers. And put the
The story keeps getting better.
Yeah.
I was there. I saw it firsthand.
Yeah.
He had that thing corner loaded, and he had that thing cranked up for all it was worth, and the receiver cranked up for all it was worth. And there was literally drywall that was freshly drywalled room. The guy had just had a crew in there drywall that room. We watched that drywall start working itself loose and start flapping. Doug went and got a screw gun, and he was walking around the room just screwing the drywall back in. He's like, well, at least I'm figuring out the problem before I figure it out later.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty funny stuff. So we met some of these guys. You know, Mark. I don't know. Actually, Mark wasn't at the event. There was a different Mark that was in our VIP tours. It wasn't Mark Fox. It was Mark. It started with a H, his last name. So I'll take that back. But Mark's on a lot of the Youth Man podcasts. So hi, Mark. Thanks for saying hi. Thanks for stopping in. JTR brought the heat. They sure did. It sounded great in there. So Ryan's saying you couldn't you have also changed the crossover slope? Not on my Denon and Marantz. Maybe Storm lets you change that kind of thing, but I don't get that option. My crossover is just a hertz frequency that you check. You don't get to choose the dB slope per octave. Can you choose that?
He's asking, and he's referring to what? What does he mean?
I'll rewind the conversation a little bit. So when I was talking about how I thought the JTR subs were a little bit too loud for my subjective preference on Saturday when I was in there. I would have brought them down just a couple 3 dB. And I said that it was making, because they were elevated that high, it was making the crossover point higher than I liked and making the bass a little bit muddier than it otherwise had to be. That was my observation. And he said, but couldn't you have changed the crossover slope? And I was saying, there was Storm audio. I don't know what Storm's capability is in that regard. I can't do it on my receiver, my Marantz AV10.
Well, and you were in the JTR scene?
What?
You thought it was hot on the JTR? I know we've already
talked about on Saturday when I was in there, I thought the bass was a little hot. Bottom line.
I just said with the JTR. What am I saying? With the John Wick 4 scene, you thought it was too hot on that?
No, I don't think I was in there for the John Wick 4 scene. I didn't see that in there.
Oh, what scene did you see?
I saw Unbroken. I saw
because maybe they had a different when you were in there.
There was a music track they were playing or something too, I think.
Okay, I didn't hear any music or anything like that, but John Wick 4 was mostly what I saw. But with the quick hitting gunshots, and then when he's punching it at the beginning, it was so lean and tight. And I don't mean lean in a bad way, but I mean no overhang, no nothing. If you would have been in there when I was in there, I can't see that you would have thought that the subs were up too much. It was super quick hitting, impactful, like to the chest bass and then gone. Like, so I either a different demo or they had the settings different or something. But
yeah, I mean, they might have changed the settings a little bit throughout the day. I did move around seats a few times just to make sure it wasn't just a particular mode in the room or the seat I was sitting in. It wasn't that for me. But again, that's all subjective preference. I can't tell you that you wouldn't have liked it in there, and no one can tell me I did or didn't like it. I know what I like from a lot of years in this hobby, and I would have subjectively lowered it a couple.
I know what you like too, and you would have liked the John Wick 4 scene.
He just totally negated what I said, but you're not right.
I know what you like better than you know what you like.
So here's the follow-up to Ryan's comment saying changing it from like a 12 dB per octave to a Linkwitz Riley 24 dB per octave. Storm might have that capability. I don't know anything about it for Marantz or Denon or Onkyo or any of the more mainstream receivers. You can't do that. You don't get that choice.
Yeah, I definitely, on my cheapy Onkyo, no way. Yeah, I can't do that. This is Ryan. Here's what this is right now. This is Ryan trying to sell us a Storm.
There you are. He's been working on me for a while now, but I turn off auto EQ, so there's not a whole lot of incentive. And I'm not going more than 16 speakers. Or 15 speakers, as it were. I'm done. There's no more reason for me to go higher personally. So Youth Man says, "Hey, Youth Man, thanks for joining us tonight. That's nice to see you on here. I wish I had the opportunity to hear the SVS room. I wish you did too. They did a really good job. I already said in the podcast I thought they were one of the more balanced rooms. They know their limits. They didn't try to go crazy. They didn't try to go way above their limits. I didn't hear any bad sounds in there. It sounded nice. I mean, their whole room, he was saying their whole room was like 10-4. $10,400. And he said if you didn't want the two PB16s and you wanted to step down to a smaller subwoofer like the SB2000 or something, he said you could get that whole room for $6,400.
Yeah.
Now compare that to some of the other rooms in there; they're 10 times the cost. So
that's a good point.
better performance, but 10 times the cost.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. They also had this little item, and maybe everybody has it, and I'm just ignorant to it, but I thought it'd be pretty cool. I don't know, like using it on my screen porch or wherever. But it's a little amp / streamer for, what was it, like a few $100 or something like that, all in one little box. You know what I'm talking about?
They demoed that in there, but it was attached to 2 bookshelf speakers. But he said you could buy it standalone. To your point, what you're talking about, very cool little device.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Little, was it 200 watts by 2 or 300 watts by 2? I don't remember exactly what he said, but it's a little amplifier. It's got all the different AirPlay, Chromecast, all that kind of stuff. It's got a lot of little online internet streamers, Bluetooth capability. It's got multiple different types of input. It's got coax, RCA, optical. Like it's like an all-in-one little tiny box.
Right. I think it's like $500 or $600 or something like that.
Integrates with HEOS and all the different proprietary apps for the different AVRs that are commonplace. Like it integrates that. You can have up to, I think he said up to 6, and I might get this wrong, but I think he said you got up to 16 of those things in your house, have them all synchronized and playing the same music through the house. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Price on it was around $600 or $500 or something.
Yeah. Something like that.
That's a nice little idea.
And he was, at one point, he powered those little speakers. I swear they had like 3-inch, 4-inch drivers or something like that.
They didn't look like they could do what they did they?
Yeah. And my buddy was like, they're cheating here, right? They've got, so I was like, I don't know, maybe it sounds like they're cheating.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was kind of thinking the same thing. Like this, they don't seem like they should hit that low, because he was playing some bassy music and they're just 2 little bookshelves.
Yeah.
And they were, in fact,
in ours, room.
He had a little tiny micro sub, and he introduced those speakers saying, "Now we got this little micro sub," and they sounded really full. Like it wasn't super loud, but it was nice and deep.
Yeah.
At one point, he just disconnected the wires from the sub, and he's like, "I tricked you. The sub wasn't even playing. This is just these 2 little speakers." And everyone was like, "That's kind of interesting." So, like in your living room or in your bedroom or something, plenty of output. Not for your home theater room, but for your secondary rooms, absolutely. And that whole set, that little control box you're talking about, and the 2 bookshelves was like 900 or 800 type range. So the bookshelves were not that expensive in comparison.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's a good deal.
So then, let's see. Youthman followed up and said he's too busy during the event. There's a lot of rooms he didn't even get to experience, which is sad because this is his orchestration. But
I know. I saw him walking around a couple of times, and I didn't want to even like. I still wanted to introduce him to my buddy, but I'm like, I don't even want to bother him. He's got to be like right now.
Too much happening. Yeah. All right. So Charlie B saying thanks for the live stream recap. And we got someone talking about the coat hanger again. That was epic. Okay. So let's keep going down. Gene Splicer says, I still can't get over that he picked the clip sub as the top 2. I heard some of that, but I when I was doing the subwoofer comparison, and then I didn't even know what was what. I didn't stay around to hear the results. I was kind of bouncing at that point, talking to different people. So I don't even know which ones I chose. But I'd heard a lot of people did pick that clip sub. I want to express a little bit of, this might be in a little bit of positive feedback that those guys, constructive feedback that those guys could implement next year. When you have 7 subwoofers and they're stretched across the front soundstage in a room that's like 25, 30 feet wide, I don't know how wide was that room, somewhere in that range probably, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe even more, because my room's 18 up here and like 24 here, and it was probably wider than my room, so it's probably 30 foot wide.
At least 30, yeah.
So you got 7 subs stretched across that long of a range. You and I both know, and they know too, when you're measuring that stuff, you're going to have a lot of different modes and nulls. And not only that, but your distances and matching with the main speakers are not going to be on anymore, because the distances are vastly different between the center speaker sub and the one that's against the wall over here. Right. So that's not a perfect comparison. And if somebody walked away thinking that a certain sub that was in the middle sounded way better than one on the outside, it could be something as simple as that. And also, if you only sat in one seat, because the way a single subwoofer interacts with the room and the boundary gains and all that stuff,
I'll say this,
anyone's guess.
I'll say this though, when I was in there, when Ryan was running it, he is immediately, when he got done with the last sub, he's like, all right, everybody up, move a spot. And he was like, he wasn't taking no for an answer on the moving. You were moving.
That's good, because
So,
the
yeah.
alternative to that to help is to move different seats so you experience it and then try to hear the same thing and see if your opinion holds.
Yeah.
So good. I'm glad he was able to do that.
So
And get
that
people moving around.
variable was pretty well taken care of. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's tough to get it set up, and that's why I didn't take too much stock in it myself. I just kind of, it was fun, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with a mic measurement, with Omni mic, and you do an RTA measurements, you can move a sub 3 foot left to right, and it makes tremendous differences in one seat. You could have 10 or 15 dB swing depending on how small your room is and how much boundary interaction you're getting. And so, you know, hey, this sub doesn't have as much bid base. Well, you just lost 7 or 10 dB on there because of a boundary interaction. Constructive feedback might be to have less compared and keep them centered, and try to keep the distances more the same so that you don't have such a disparate thing, and maybe compare 2 or 3 at a time type thing. Hard to do it exactly perfectly. They did the best they could with what they had and the time they had. It was still excellent. You know, people got to look and feel the subs and get a sense of them, and so that was all fun too.
Yeah, sure.
So here's someone saying the per listen. Yes, I agree with this fully. The per listen engineer, one of the owners, founders, and at least an engineer some point, had a really good talk at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning about boundary games and room interactions and all that kind of stuff. It was very deep dive. I think some people said it went over their head, but it was found. I would have loved to have a recording to it and watch it again, because there's information in there that I didn't know and hadn't been exposed to before. It was really good. It was kind of the science behind how those boundary interactions and room nodes and modes are nodes and modes are created. If I could talk. How did the Epson LS 12,000 do? We talked about that a little earlier in the podcast. You probably were talking to us at that point about that. So I think I kind of explained it. If you it's better just to rewind it than recap it here. Coat hanger experience was amazing. Yeah, that's kind of what we were talking about too. That's fun. Okay, so Ryan says the Sony sharpness is artificial due to the reality creation engine. Do we care?
I know.
Do we care?
I like me some artificial sharpness.
I do too. And there's people that don't, and that's fine. If you like a sharp image, do you care how much, as long as it doesn't have artifacting or stuff you see? If it just looks like it's a clearer picture, I don't care.
No, not too much. And some of that too is just when you see it side by side. I mean, so many of these projectors, if you just saw that projector in your room, you'd be so happy and you'd love it forever. And because you're not seeing another one, thinking, you're not like pixel watching, like looking at every little tiny detail,
that's a good point.
and all that kind of thing. So yeah,
good point. Life of Bliss showed up in here. Look at that.
Hey
guys, such a great weekend, man. Kyle, you brought so much stuff to that thing. I felt pathetic. I brought a little backpack in full of like wires and stuff, and he brought in a trailer full of his whole front soundstage, like a bunch of 24s from GSG Audio, like a full like covered trailer full of gear. Thanks for making that work, man. You were a big contribution. Yeah. He's probably the only guy there that could carry that one of those 24-inch subs over his shoulder too, I think.
Maybe you and him.
I don't get, not anymore.
Not anymore.
Some youth man's saying that they really enjoyed the per listen seminar. Yeah, I agree. That was great. We keep going down here. Tone mapping on the Epson. He said he had a lot of donuts for that testing. Tone mapping on the Epson. Tone mapping on the Epson is better than it's given credit for on the forums. You can find a setting that you do not have to tinker with, and you can leave it alone. In the last 6 months, I think I've adjusted my tone mapping settings 2 times. So, you know, you read on the forums, the Epson doesn't have dynamic tone mapping. The JVC does. You're going to constantly be messing with the Epson. You're hitting that slider. No, that's not the case. The 2 times that I've hit that was with some sort of Disney show on the Disney streaming app, where the HDR is just crap. I mean, some of those HDR movies on Disney's streaming stuff is just not well done. So you just scramble the HDR slider down or put it in SDR to get past that. I don't know how it looks on the JVC. I didn't go back and visit those on the JVC, but it's not something you have to touch all the time, and it's perfectly adequate, in my opinion, for 4K HDR. And I'll also comment on this. Somebody asked me, how does the Epson 5040 UB HDR tone mapping compare to the Epson LS 12,000 tone mapping? You got it. The 5040 UB's tone mapping is crap. It's so bad that I didn't even like to watch HDR on it.
It's non-existent. Now I will. Okay, so let me add to that. So Ray from the forums goes by Amira. Really good dude. It's good to meet him. He was telling me about the not so expensive Envy Vertex 2 HD Fury. Hope I got all that right. It's only like it's a few hundred, like $500 or something like that. Has made a massive difference on his Epson 6040. Like huge difference. As far as
is
HDR.
it one that's stripping off HDR and putting in like BT 2020 SDR?
Don't know. I don't know that. But I looked up on the forum, and yeah, there's all kinds of people that absolutely love it for those older projectors that don't have any dynamic tone mapping. It had such good word of mouth on the threads I was looking at that even guys with JVCs were trying it out. They didn't find much of a difference. It wasn't really worth it for them from what I saw. I may have missed some people that thought it made a difference, because I was thinking about it too. I'm like, hey, I'll try it out. But so for anybody out there that's running one of the older Epsons, like the one I still have, the 5040, or the 5050, or even the JVC RS 500s, or any of those, look into that, because I've read a lot of posts today from people that are pretty happy with that. So
that's cool. So did you get to go to the MWAVE or the Envy demonstration this time? Were you in that?
Was that on Sunday?
I think so.
No,
I missed it too. I hit it last year, and I really was excited with what I saw. It's kind of more expensive than I want to spend, but it's a neat product. And they made some improvements in it with like motion handling and so forth. And I didn't really hear much about it, but just not because people weren't talking about it, just because I just didn't intersect with it. But I'm curious how that went out. Maybe someone else will speak up on it.
I kind of didn't want to see that. Make me spend money.
We got some guys from Seymour in here. Evan's in here from Seymour. That's nice. So Youthman confirms the LS12000 is fantastic projector.
Oh, and I posted this on your room thread, Jonathan. I don't like frame creation ever, but the other night at your place, it looked really good. And I've tried it on the same projector in my room and didn't like it. So I don't know what the heck.
I feel like it's one of those things where I feel like it's one of those things where when you get used to it, it's hard to take it away. Because when I'm watching other projectors after I've been used to watching on the LS12000, they all just seem like herky-jerky, like panning, and everything's like bump, 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 bump.
And the opposite is usually true. If you're used to the normal and then you do it, it looks artificial and soap opera-y and that kind of stuff. But on all of your demos, I
had it on the whole time.
I know you did, but I was digging it on those demos. I was liking it, so I don't know.
Yeah, some people say that they think it's still a little too strong. For me, it's perfect. Like I think people see things a little bit differently, and we've kind of talked about that different way. Yeah, like to me, it's spot on, and not so much when we're doing the home theater demos. Actually, with all the demos that we were doing off my PC when you guys were over at one of our demo sessions, they have a little bit of a jerkiness, and it's something with my home theater PC. If I put it on a Blu-ray, it's smooth as butter, like just gorgeous. In fact, Tony, yes, probably. I don't know how to fix it, or I already would. Tony was saying he could always see some frame interpolation issues, and he was still saying the Epson's not perfect. It said it's good, but it's not perfect. And I said, let's put it on a Blu-ray because it'll be perfect. And he's like, we'll see that. We put it on a Blu-ray, and he's like, yeah, I don't spot anything wrong with it. It's perfect. So home theater PCs are garbage sometimes. He doesn't use frame interpolation. He's got a JVC NZ9, which is just phenomenal projector. In fact, speaking of that, in that JTR room with a 186-inch screen or whatever it was, wasn't that the cat's meow? That was just gorgeous. The NZ9. Oh my goodness. Yeah. One of the best images I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So let's go back up here. They're talking about unloading. Man, they were unloading till 1:30 a.m. They had 3 of those 26-foot trucks, and they were just working hard. About 10 guys over there knocking it out at the end of the evening.
Yeah.
Some of the guys saying they got back to Iowa about the same time. Keep going down. Sheldon says proud to see the Hover Boss there. Yeah, but I wish we would have got to feel a little bit. Maybe next year we can make that happen.
Yeah, I said earlier it was like coming home. I loved seeing that setup.
I'm not very good about starting these as we go along. I think Ryan and Michael are better at that, so I'm a little behind the scenes here, but we'll try to behind the thing here, but I'll try to catch up. And then Youthman says he liked yours quite a bit more. That you've done a good job balancing it in this year.
Yeah,
so that's a nice compliment.
Thanks, Michael.
So what's Mike's previous comment? I must have missed it.
And that's based. Oh, yeah.
Mike, if you're still here, I know it's about an hour later. Let us know what you meant by that. I don't know what you're meaning by that one. So you got comments like this from Paul. Say it was great seeing everyone. I agree. Sheldon agreed with that earlier too. That was just fun meeting a lot of old friends that you've talked to on the forums for years, you've talked to online for years, and putting a face to a name and shaking hands and eating lunch together and all that's really good. Building those relationships. And I know Michael's all about that too. He was telling us on the call, like that's his focal point for this MWAVE event is to build those relationships within the community and get little local communities started. Kansas City's got a great community where we have a fairly regular movie night. It's not every month anymore. We try to aim for that, but it doesn't always happen. But you know, like he wants to get those little kind of communities sprung up throughout the nation, and I think that's a really neat effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
So keep on going. Uh-oh. This is a question we can't answer. I also want to put this in there. People were coming up to me a couple times this weekend saying like, hey, I really appreciate this event you're putting on. And I always said clearly, this is not my event. Hold up. This is not my event. This is Michael and Ryan's event. They've done all the work behind it. This is their baby. You know, I was just a customer, like Sheldon was just a customer. We were just there as an enthusiast, and they did a great job. This is all their effort, and it was fantastic.
Yep.
Here we go. Perlison brought 7 subs for the room. They sure did. There was a lot of firepower in that room and the JTR room. Man, that stereo integrity room was insane, Andy B says. Yes, it was. Here's the funny thing. I don't know the name of that song. Do you know what it is? It's like an old orchestra piece, and it's got a 6 hertz tune in it or something, and those drivers are just moving out of their skin, and my pant legs are flapping, and there's ceiling dust coming down. That's really fun.
I might if I wasn't in there for that. I don't know what they were playing.
I think Desert Dome played this for us. He was the one who introduced that to us at one point. So Youthman says they filled up all 14 rooms, maxed out the rooms, could easily double attendance next year. I agree. And on the side, Sheldon and I and some of the other Casey guys have talked about that. You guys could easily double that next year and keep growing. I mean, the sky's the limits, right? Because Exponent or something has thousands of people, and you're doing something different than they are with the home theater versus the two channel.
Yeah. Yeah, and Rocky Mountain is no more.
That's true, and they can and do go in a living room. They are beautifully crafted, and they do that in-house. We were talking to David Gage, who's the owner of Deep Sea Sound.
I definitely know Brian Feller's name from the forums.
Yeah, he's Agrius. I'm saying it wrong probably, but Agrius on the forums.
Yeah. Yeah, those were beautiful. Agreed. And that would be the tough thing. It's like I like keeping stuff hidden so I don't look like a crazy person, but you'd have to have those. Yeah, you'd have to see those. Those are beautiful cabinets.
Well, so this is their perspective. They're trying to show something that puts their product in the best light, but it is kind of a point. If you go to enough of these type of events, like you to Exponent, you kind of end up hearing the same track list on a lot of these different speaker companies. They at least ought to give you the opportunity to play a request, you know, like, hey, play this song, and have that capability. They can run their track list as they see fit, but let the customer make a request.
Yeah, agreed.
Did we have a chance to listen to the Focal or Martin Logan top of the line? Yes, Sheldon did, and he really liked them. He was talking. I didn't spend much time in there, and I didn't get to listen to the Focal. Did you listen to the Focal?
I did. The Martin Logan's really impressed. The vocals weren't bad, but yeah, the Martin Logan. But again, the Martin Logans were playing Keith Don't Go and another, super. But still, it sounded fantastic. So yeah, but I would have liked it. Hey, can you throw some AC/DC on there? Let's see how that sounds.
Youthman says he liked those F200s. The F200s were the Martin Logans that were used in the auto EQ comparison room. They had 7
okay.
of them
Okay.
in there.
Oh yeah, agreed. They were good.
So keeping going down. This is back to the Martin Logan comment. Apparently they did request and they didn't want to play them. So
Boo.
yeah, that's something they should change next year. But I don't want to get too down on it. Just give them the constructive feedback. Maybe Michael can pass that on, that they should give that option.
I'll get down on them because that's my music. That's not yours. You're like, that's cool.
Well, doesn't Ryan? Because Ryan kind of likes some of that music too, right?
Oh, he does. Yeah,
And he
for
likes
sure.
some of the Martin Logans with electrostatic. So there's not
Oh,
really
yeah.
any reason.
I've heard Orion several times in his room. Yeah, it's great.
Chris says they need an airport hanger for MWAVE 2024. How many subs would JTR bring if you had an airport hanger? That
All of them. They'd round up all the ones they've already sold to people.
Oh, now this hits close to home because oh yeah, someone must have commented, moved it up. No, that's it. So Youthman says next year the vendors need to arrange their shipping their own gear. That's because this year those poor guys handled the luggage, moving that stuff to Ryan's house and his mother-in-law's house and filled up both garages and stuff. They sure did their work.
Wow, yeah.
Okay, so this gentleman says I use the DTS up mixer for 5.1 and 7.1 channel games. I find that's more accurate in sound placement for DS, at least for games.
I'm not surprised. That's why I asked you about the movie thing, because I like the DTS X up mixer better for movies than I do the Dolby, and vice versa for music. I'm not a gamer either, but I'm not surprised that he's saying that.
I still kind of prefer Dolby Surround, but I'm not going to fault you if you prefer that. That's fine. And especially, I think it also might kind of depend on if you're sitting in the primary seat, because DTS didn't like make a mistake with their mixer in the sense of what they're trying to intentionally do. They had plenty of years to program it for it. But if you're sitting off axis or you're in a rear seat, you're sitting right here and you're next to a speaker, there's weird stuff happening with DTSX, and I stand by that. There's weird stuff happening. So here we go.
I haven't heard the weird stuff for movies. I've heard it on music. It would make sense. I mean, movies have music in it, so.
I got an example of weird stuff that happened in movies. We were watching like a 1950s black and white film. It was, I don't even remember what it was, something off the Disney thing. And I was watching
5.1 though?
No, it was in stereo.
That's what I mean. That's what. Okay, I should qualify what I'm saying. Any movie in like 5.1, so maybe music too. I haven't really tried it, but any movie that's 5.1 or 7.1, I like DTSX. 2-channel stuff, not even close. Dolby Surround all day long for anything in 2-channel.
All right, I can buy what you're selling, because we were watching that movie and something just screamed out of the front left wide. It was like so loud. It was like grab for the remote and try to turn it down, and it was totally out of place. Like, what in the world just happened there? And then I played it back with Dolby Surround on it. Didn't do that at all.
Interesting, but it was 2-channel.
It was an old 1950s black and white Disney movie, so it definitely would have been 2-channel.
Yeah.
How well did the 18-inch JTR compare to the 24? Well, they didn't have a direct comparison, but an 18-inch, by virtue of size, is going to take 2 to 3 to equivalent. I mean, the JTRs is a fantastic driver. They say with kind of a mediocre driver, you're looking at 3 18s to match a 24. So I'm going to put it in the ballpark of 2 to 3 for 18s to match a 24. As far as if you had equity of output with, decent amps on both sides, that kind of thing.
In my opinion on that is, if you had equal firepower, so however many 18s you needed for the 24, you could make either one sound like the other one, in my opinion, in the room setup. I don't know. What do you think about that, Jonathan?
I was reading comments. Repeat it, and I'll speak to it.
My opinion is, you could make, if you had equal firepower, however many 18s it took to match the 24s, you could make either one of those sound like the other one in the same room, depending
Absolutely.
on how you
I agree. And I think that brings up another point. There was a gentleman there that was kind of new to the hobby, and he had some nice equipment, but he hadn't really got to integrate it yet or really get to play with it very much yet. And he was of the firm opinion that anything with a big surround on it or a big heavy driver, like a traditional like beastie subwoofer, couldn't do what pro audio subwoofers do, and it couldn't play the high mid bass punchiness that you feel in your chest cavity. And he was saying, like, yeah, I just want to get like a 40 hertz bass bin, like from PV or something, because that's what I like. And I said, that's not right. That's all about the EQ. The Dayton Audio UM1822s that I have, they have a lower frequency response native, but they can do what those higher drivers do as long as you have the headroom to meet. It's all in the EQ you build.
As long as you
So
have enough of them to get what you
yes,
want with the EQ,
yes,
you go.
you need the headroom capability, and you can boost from like 50 hertz to say 90 hertz or 50 hertz to 110 hertz and kind of get that, craft it how you like. And I also told him, if you don't even like, if that's something you don't have the capability to do, just crank the crossover on your speakers up. So the THX default is 80. Put that crossover at 250 hertz and try it, and you're going to get a club sound. It's a very different sound, and it sounds a little muddy. It's not how I like to run things, but it will put a smile on your face on some of the old rock because it brings that crossover point higher. It lets those subs play higher, and that higher pitch sound is kind of like more of a pro audio sound that you're used to hearing in a traditional club or something with pro audio gear.
Right.
And you can tailor that. You can make a little hump. That's why those mid bass modules are so popular. HSU's got an old, kind of the first foray into that, but there's other companies that do
I
it
had
now.
one of those.
Yeah, where they're just boosting at 50 hertz to 90 hertz or whatever it is, and they're giving you more impact in the area.
Right. Now, I will say, if you're on a limited budget and you're only going to buy like one or two, and your priority is not low bass for movies, you want a punchy music room, then I probably would go with that, because you won't have enough headroom and output on the other subs to match what you could do on the pro audio driver. There is that argument. So you do have to have the
If you're just
headroom
getting
for
one
it.
of one or two of two type thing, and you're not going to get a bunch of them, all right, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to keep going down here. Right here, stereo integrity versus JTR. How do they compare? Performance, value, extension. So stereo integrity has different levels of speakers. They have anything from like a $200 driver all the way up to several $1,000 driver, right? And JTR does too. So there's a website that I'm not even sure it's working properly at any given day, but it was a fantastic resource, and it had some of these drivers compared. It was called Database, data-bass.
It's gone.
And
I found a link where I can still find it all, but you can't do the comparison button anymore. But you can still find all of the measurements on there. If you just go to straightdatabase.com, it's been gone for a long time, and it's super sad, because that was awesome.
So keep talking, Sheldon. Elaborate on that, and I'm going to try to look at the Wayback Machine and see if it has an archive. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Ricky, I don't know how does Josh pronounce his last name? Is it Richie?
That's good enough for what I know. Go ahead.
Yeah, so for many years he's been measuring subwoofers, and the guy really knows his stuff, and everybody respects him and knows that he's doing it the right way. Created this awesome database on a website called Database, and has everything, and you could compare a driver with another driver, and it's anything from from store-bought stuff to DIY drivers put in boxes. I mean, he had so many that you could compare with each other. Well, it's blank now when you go on there. I did a deep search and finally found a link. Maybe I can dig it up and send it to Jonathan. He can put it on this video, because I know I'd like to see it if I were one of you guys. You can't do the comparison on it. Before, you could have one driver, one sub up there, and then go up to the drop down menu and put another one there, and would overlay like the two compared against each other. That was awesome. That feature isn't working for me on that, but at least you can see all the measurements still on there. So yeah, hopefully it gets running again. There's all kinds of forum topics started by people in the last couple of years. What happened to database? So yeah, a lot of people are wanting to see that still up there, because yeah, it's pretty awesome. So as far as how they compare, yeah, it just depends on. As far as extension, they will all go as low as you want them to go if it's sealed. And then JTR's most popular is ported at 10 hertz. That's the 4000. Yeah, so it's a tough question. As far as value, you're always going to get more bang for your buck on the DIY stuff, just because that's how it works, because you're having to do work yourself. So that's part of what you're paying for if you buy JTR, versus if you're going to buy an SI driver. Then that's what mine are. I have a bunch of SI drivers in my room, and So save some money doing that way. So it just depends on what your priorities are for that, as far as if you want to put some of your own work into it, or if you want to pay a little bit more for somebody else to do it. So
you can find some of this stuff. This is what I was hoping to find, but it's not even working properly here necessarily. That's a real shame because this is such a great resource. The Wayback Machine is a way to look up like archived internet history. This thing just crawls sites, and it
nice.
has like date snapshots of different times when it snapshotted this site. So you can go in there and you can click on one of these drivers, and you might have to pick a different date to pick up the page because it's whatever pages they crawled. But you can usually find your way through a site. It's not super great as far as like every page working, but you can usually piece it together with these different snapshots that it's
Jonathan,
done.
I'll be right back. Okay.
Sure thing. I'm going to stop sharing here. I'll keep going down here. Yeah, continuing to scroll down. All right, so this guy's asking, where did I get the acoustic foam on the wall behind you? Seth's asking that. There's a site on eBay, and I'm going to pull it up right now, that I found that on, and I really like it, and I highly recommend it. So let's see, 3.5-inch dome foam, I think was the name. Acoustic foam, maybe. I'll share my screen here in a second once I find it for you. Let's try this. I think I might even have it on my watch list for easy reference, and I can put that in the chat here. Yep, here it is. So I will drop this in the chat instead of posting it. So if you type in 3 and space 1 / to the right, leaning to the right 2, so 3 1/2-inch thick studio acoustic soundproofing foam kit over all size 50 by 84. You know what? I am going to share my screen because that's getting a lot of, that's a mouthful here. So let's do share screen, and let's do this, and then let's do entire screen, and then share. And here you go. Hopefully that's showing on the screen. This is the kit that I bought, and I really think highly of it. I've talked about it on the Youthman podcast that I tried the traditional acoustic foam panels in 2 inches and 4 inches and Rockwool and OC703 and that kind of thing. And I never was really in love with that because it didn't really apply to all my chairs evenly. This, I can just coat that back wall, that right wall, and it applies to my different seating positions uniformly. And also because it's not the same thickness, it's 3.5 inches at its thickest, and it's basically almost on the drywall at the thinnest sections. It's going to give you a little bit of more of a diffusion of sound. Some of it gets absorbed, some of it gets reflected. And so it's spreads that out very nicely. What I will say about that is until I got that foam, I had the panels up there, and until I got that foam, I always felt like, you know, either you're getting too much absorption or you move a little bit and you're not getting any absorption because now you're off the panel's reflection point. And that wall always seemed too close. Like my measurements, my OmniMic measurements would show I was getting 75 dB from all the speakers, but that right side wall sounded closer than my left side because my room is asymmetrical. My left side's open more than my right side. This fixed it. This foam fixed it. So now that right wall disappears. It doesn't sound close. And I really do highly recommend this stuff. I personally liked it better than the panels. So, you know, if you watched my original video with Youthman, acoustic foam gets a bad rap, but it doesn't always have to be. In fact, I wrote these guys and I said, I really appreciate your product and here's how I'm using it. Would you, you're welcome to use a picture of my room if you want. And they said, yeah. And so, yeah, my room previous with just the single row is part of their marketing now. So I don't get any kickback from them. I don't even know those guys, but I like their product.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. I noticed the difference too. So I got some for my own room. Got some on the ceiling, along with some diffusion panels and some on the sidewall. And I know, like, it's not supposed to be right? Like foam stuff is supposed to be junk or whatever. But I think you're right. It does 3 things. It reflects at the shorter parts. It absorbs at the thicker parts, and there's diffusion there because it's all so yeah. I agree with that.
And you know,
anybody that is like adamant about that should go to your room and listen to it and then come out. They'll have a different opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it's doing its thing too, because when you just have to walk on that side of the chairs and it just gets dead over there by that foam. It absolutely is working. So, you know, I don't think that there's any concern that it's a joke. It does work. So we're going to continue going down. Oh, I wanted to mention those SVS speakers. Someone is talking about ports, and that's a question that I don't think was intended for the podcast, so I'm not going to post it, but it did remind me of a question I had for the SVS Prime Pinnacle speakers that they were demoing. There's some voodoo going on there. I don't understand, and I asked the salesman, and he didn't see. He admitted he didn't really understand it either. Each one of the drivers, there's 3 6.5 or 3 8. I don't remember if they're 8s or 6s, but 3 drivers, woofers on those Prime Pinnacle towers, and they're port tuned at different frequencies. So one is like 50 hertz, one is 40 hertz, and one is 30 hertz.
Interesting.
And I heard that, and I was like, what in the world? I said, don't you? I asked the question, raised my hand. I said, doesn't that make phase issues? Like, doesn't that
you would think,
mess
right?
up your frequency response instead of helping it? Whatever they're doing, he said they won some sort of engineering award for it. Whatever they're doing, it's supposed to extend the bass frequency well beyond what the cabinet would allow for normally with those different port tunes. And he says that it's, it's he kind of used the word pure freaking magic in that to several different things that SVS was doing. But I was curious more about the technology. I'd love to get a pair of those to measure in my own room. I don't understand how that could not cause phase issues, but they sounded good, so I couldn't argue with the results.
Interesting.
Okay, scrolling down. Youthman says he'd love for the KC folks to share some of their knowledge with seminars like REW and Dirac and walkthrough and that kind of stuff. And he kind of mentioned that on the call that we were on right before this podcast too. That was just incidental. We didn't set this up. Sheldon and I were going to do this little talk without talking to Ryan or Michael, either one. We were just going to offer our opinion. We thought it was an excellent experience and wanted to share that. But it just so happened that Ryan and Michael called on a group call right before this. And so we kind of heard some of the stuff that they had suggested that might be an option. And we'd be happy to do that. The Kansas City group loves sharing our knowledge. So scrolling down, Chris would hope that SVS brings a full ultra setup next year. His biggest shocker of the year's event was a speaker shootout Saturday night. My comparison sheet shows it blows his mind versus some of his old biases. I think Chris was one that said he really liked the SVS sound. Like it surprised him at how good it was. Yeah, it was kind of curious that they didn't bring a full ultra setup. The only ultra speaker in their setup was the center channel, and they had Prime Pinnacle everywhere else. But it still did a really good presentation, and I think they were trying to recognize the value. They made a very big point in their presentation. Each of these vendors is kind of demoing their product, and then they have a little chance to speak, and they kind of do that just over and over again through the day. And the salesman that was there kind of talking about this was saying, like, SVS really targets and caters to the everyman. They said, we want to make a product. It's very important to us that anyone can afford it, that it's an aspiration that they can obtain. And so he said, he said, this whole system is 10.4. He said, you drop the subwoofers if you got a smaller room to the PB2000. We already kind of talked about this. It's be like 6100. He said, if you still got a smaller room, we can drop the speakers even down a size. You can go to their Prime series instead of their Prime Pinnacle. He said, we can get it to work within your budget. And that's something that their company really targets on and really focuses on because it's important to them. They want the hobby to be accessible. And so I think that might be part of the reason, because they knew JTR and they knew Per Listen were bringing these just like extreme, like throw everything at the kitchen sink at it and make it just the most incredible experience you can. And SVS was saying, look, these systems cost $50,000, $100,000 for you to piece together, and ours is more affordable. So I think that's what they were trying to showcase. That's probably why they didn't bring the full ultra. If I had to guess, that's probably why they didn't want to bring the full ultra system. Scrolling down, this guy really liked the Martin Logan F200s. Amazing imaging and smooth punch for $2,500 each. I will tell you that
were those in the audio EQ room? Is that where those were?
Right. That's right.
Yeah,
I will tell you that those were extremely good build quality. I was helping some of the guys in that room disassemble them, and just taking off the feet and feeling the build and the way they designed it. They were really nice looking and really nice build quality speakers. Somebody got a deal on it because I think some people bought those things too, or at least some of them, and they were like a nice percentage off as demos.
Yeah, it's nice that Martin Logan's right here in Lawrence. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Close by.
So we got a bunch of people in the comments. I'm not going to highlight them all, just talking about how clips did better than people expected to, and that there's a lot of hate on clips, but they don't necessarily deserve it all. That's probably true.
Yeah.
I get told I hate on clips all the time, and that's not necessarily true.
Yeah,
One of my buddies, a big clips fan, and he's always like, "You hate clips." I'm like, you say I hate clips. I
You talking
don't
about
hate
Steven?
clips. No, well, Steven sometimes, but more Tim. Tim's got
Oh,
a
Tim.
big clip setup. Scrolling down. Youth Man's saying something nice here. Keep scrolling.
Thanks, Michael.
All right. Jonathan, what's your throw distance? What would be ideal for your projectors? My throw distance is about 20 feet, but that doesn't really matter. You want to go to some place like Projector Central where they have a calculator and you can see what is optimal for your range. The closer you have your projector to the screen in general, the brighter your image will be and the worse your contrast will be. And the farther you have it back, the less brightness you have, but the better contrast you have. So you just kind of play the numbers that way.
But I would just put it as close as you can, because you can always play with the aperture, or I would start with getting as much brightness as you can. That's my own personal opinion. And then you can, if it's not enough contrast for you, you can tweak it from there. But I don't know too many people that purposefully put it further back because of that reason. Do you, Jonathan?
I know a few guys on the forums have talked about that, where they say that they prefer having that just for the absolute most, like the contrast guys that are just that's the first and foremost. Some of the guys in that thread, I've read that over the years, but yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you that if you have your druthers and it doesn't make any difference for position, forward brightness is probably pretty important. But also here, I'll aim it that way, and Sheldon, you could probably show the same thing. Sure. If I move that forward, that projector would be over people's heads, and you can hear that fan noise. So I wanted it further back for that purpose. And what's your throw distance, Sheldon?
So I'm at like 17.5 feet, I think. Yeah.
And he's got his behind his couch too, so somebody doesn't bump his head. Like he could move it potentially forward, but are you at the limits?
I'm about well, for the JVC, I'm at my limit. The Epson could be a little closer, but not a ton. So, in fact, the JVC would not have worked if not for that zoom mode that it's got. Do you know about that?
Yeah, I think you've mentioned, but you can share with the audience because the audience won't know. Go ahead and share on that.
I don't remember, but so there's a zoom mode on there that allows the. I wish Ryan were here.
It uses the full panel or not the full panel, right?
Yeah,
because it's a 16 by 10 panel instead of a 16 by 9 panel.
Yeah, it uses the full panel, and if I didn't use that, I would when I zoom big for scope for 239.1 or 235.1, whatever, it would have just quite not filled my 158-inch screen from 17.5 foot back. But with using the zoom function, it does fill, and you're not losing. It sounds like, oh, are you stretching something? Are you is something off the screen? No, it's still, you're seeing everything that's supposed to be there, and there's no stretching or anything like that. So really, a lot of guys just use it anyway because you gain a little bit of brightness with using that zoom function on the JVCs.
Something that was pretty cool that I learned at that MWAVE was that Barco projector. They have a 5K panel in there, and so your CinemaScope screen is using the extra width of the 5K panel to have native pixel resolution. It's stretching the image, if you will, to the 5K, but there's actual pixels there. You're not over zooming. So when they do a 16 by 9 to CinemaScope, when they stretch that, you actually have full pixel density on the width of it, which is kind of an interesting thing. They said they have a custom panel in there, and at least they were saying at the show that they're the only company that does that. So like JVC has a 16 by 10. Theirs is wider than 16 by 10. I don't think he said a ratio, but it was wide enough to do the full CinemaScope.
Wow, that's cool.
It is cool.
I hadn't heard of that.
Now those Barco projectors are a pretty penny, but they did a great job too.
Yeah.
All right, so this guy's just asking, Sheldon, what's your setup? So you want to do a quick overview of your gear?
Yeah, sure. So my speakers, my left, right, center are JBL 4722Ns. They're pro audio type speaker that look like they have no business being brought into a home. But I love that high efficiency compression driver sound. My surrounds are JBL. I got one right here. I mean, right. I don't know if that's maybe easier to see the one back there. 70 J1s. Awesome speakers. That's what Jonathan has all over his room. I'm a huge fan of those. Ceiling speakers are RSL C34Es. It's a pretty common ceiling speaker. I'm running a NZ7 for my projector. My everyday projector for just like when it's on all the time is an Epson 5040 for surfing the internet or YouTube videos and whatnot, music listening. I've got 16 subwoofers. They're the
Wait, what? How many? 16. How many? What size?
16 18s.
You know, it's hilarious saying that.
I know it's stupid. It's really dumb. For 10 years, I've had 8 of them up front. 4 stacked in one front corner, 4 stacked in the other front corner, and I've always wanted to have 4 corners of subs. So I just think of them as individual subs. So basically, I have 4 subs. They just happen to be stacked from the floor. There's some stacked there, and I have them all hidden. And there's in the other corner. I don't know if you can see. Anyway, so 16 of those, and then under the chairs, there's a total of 18 12s to power the Hover EZ system, and then the drivers that are in the connected to the back of the seats. I think that's pretty much it. Pretty much what I'm running.
18 under, and then 4 on the back of your chairs.
No, under that was total. So the front row has 2 per seat, so there's 8 there, and then the 4 that are on the back seat. So the front row has 12. The back row has 6, so that's your 18 total.
That's phenomenal.
Here's the weird thing, Jonathan. I don't think I told you about this. The middle 2 drivers, I noticed sitting on the middle of the couch, it was way stronger on the middle of the couch, so I stopped powering the middle drivers. It's only powered on the sides, and the middle seat is still more powerful feel. So I don't know what's up with that. So I'm actually only running 4 of those drivers because the middle seat, and I don't know if it's when I raise the couch, if when I was screwing all the boards in, if I didn't get it exactly right, so maybe too much weight's on the middle. I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent here. People don't care about this.
Well, no, and you got an Onkyo receiver. I didn't hear you say that. The RZ50, which is a nice 11-channel receiver. And then it's got Dirac. It's really nice. It's really nice price to performance option. Yeah.
Not great power, but if you have really efficient speakers, it doesn't matter. You don't need much power, so that's fine. But
yeah, and you've done some testing with that, showing that even just the limited wattage on the receiver was giving your CBT 70s enough power to run to reference, and there's 92.5 dB sensitive speakers. So that kind of gives you an estimation that even that Onkyo with its AVR power could run all your speakers to reference with precision testing that you were doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so this guy's asking, how about the per listen subs? They sounded good in that room. I thought that they did a good job.
Yeah.
This Paul says, aren't the ports for the SVS subs 3 different port tunes, the PB16? Yes, Paul, but you only are supposed to use 1 at a time. So you plug in 1, it's 20 hertz. You plug in 2, it's 16, and I didn't know there was 3. But at any rate, you don't. Well,
can't
maybe
you create it? Can't you make it sealed? Plug them
all, and that's sealed. But maybe he's meaning that the 3 different ports are 3 different port tunes, and this is referring back to the Prime Pinnacle thing that we talked about recently. I didn't know that if that's the case. I thought the port, and I don't know about the PB16. I haven't followed SVS for quite a few years, but in the old days, I don't think that was the case. I think it was like the port plugging changed the port tune of the overall config. But if they're all open. Yeah, but maybe he's suggesting that if they're all open, the port tunes are at different tunes. I don't know that to be the case. Do you know that? It's probably something that'd be.
Okay, so what you were talking about a little while ago, I'd never heard of, where you had 3 different tunes going on at the same time. All I know is back in the day, and JTR had this too. Remember, I had the Captivator. You had it too, where you could plug
15 and 20.
You could make it a lower port tune.
HSU had it as well.
in the SVS, you had the 3 holes, so you could have wide open, have more output, but the highest extension, or you could plug one and have not quite as much output, but lower extension, and then so forth and so on. And I thought you could go all the way to plug all 3 of them to make it sealed.
Right. That's correct. You're right. It was I think it was 20 and 15, or maybe 20 and 16 and sealed. But I didn't, if Paul's saying, and maybe we can get clarification on that, if he's saying when all of them are open and you're not plugging any ports, are the 3 ports at different tunes then? I don't know the answer to that. It's news to me.
If they're all wait. If they're all open, then it's all the highest tune. It'd be 20 hertz.
That's what I figured. But now now I got me questioning, since they were saying the prime Pinnacle speakers were tuned at different port frequencies.
That was a speaker thing, though. He's talking the sub. There's no way they're doing that on a sub.
All right.
That would, and I can't believe they're doing it on a speaker either. I don't know. I mean, but I'm not an engineer. I'm a kickball teacher, so I have no idea.
Yeah, I have no idea how they're doing a speaker. Okay, so this gentleman says, "How did you get to hear the Arundels?" I did, Rick. So Arundel sent some subs to the MWAVE event, and they sent me 2 1723s, and I've been listening up to my living room, and the premium ticket holders got to hear those Arundels. They're a really nice speaker. I don't have any complaints on them. Super heavy duty, packaged better than probably anything I've ever seen packaged in the world. It even comes with white gloves, high density foam, like precision molded around the speakers. No, like, probably drop that off a cliff and it'd be all right. And the speaker's just like, it's filled with lead. It's so heavy. I mean, it's just a really dense build, like no reverb on the panel. The build quality impresses me a lot. The sound is very good too. I don't think they call any attention to themselves. They just kind of do what they're supposed to do, and they do it well. Like I'm gonna put them behind my screen at some point here before I send them back and give them a good review, because right now they're just on a little small table, like a folding table up in the living room, so people could get a first listen. But I'm going to try to give them a proper review, and I'll have some more information for you in the future, hopefully. But initial impressions are good.
I'll say something on that. My good friend that I brought to MWAVE with me, Chris, he's had Arundels for a couple years for his left, right, center, and he doesn't have a dedicated room. It's like a living room type setup. They sound fantastic in there. I've been a big fan. Every time I go over, they sound really, really good. And I've been curious how they would sound in a home theater setup. So I'll be really curious to hear your thoughts of, if you bring them downstairs and set them up. You have two of them, right?
I do. I'm going to do some careful compression testing with them too, because my concern with those had been that it just has a traditional soft dome tweeter, I think. And typically my expectation is that won't be able to do reference. I'm going to go real slow and be careful. But I want to see if they're capable of doing reference in a typical home theater. That would be a limiting factor for me. But for just like living room use, they're great. I mean, I really like what I'm hearing.
Yeah, because he never goes above like -10. So for his use, it's really, really good. So
they have
it was funny when we walked in and he saw him. He was like, because he loves those speakers. So it was cool that you just had a pair sitting out in your living room.
Yeah, they have a port plug configuration. We tried them in sealed mode. We tried them in open mode. We tried them with and without subs. Sounded great. They had plenty of bass, at least for what the music we were listening to upstairs, outside of like for music use.
I got a text from Ian. He says that hover platform that I kept saying, "Oh, it was so good to see that." That was his. I didn't know that. So,
oh yeah.
He's gonna, what's he say? I'm gonna convert my platform into a riser, so that I can get near field. So he wants both. He's gonna do both the hover and the near field. So that should be cool.
Yeah, looks like
to go with his massage chair in the back of the room.
That was awesome. He shared a movie night. He's one of the kind of newer guys in the Kansas City crowd. Now he's not necessarily new. He's a couple years at this point.
Oh yeah, it's been a few years.
He's a little fresh still, a little green behind the ears. Anyway, he has a fantastic, like, full-size Kansas City Chiefs chair that's like got massage things coming from every angle. And so we're watching the movie and taking turns in that back chair and just thinking like, we all need one of these. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So the last comment, Tony's back in here. I'm glad you made it home, Tony and Nick. You guys, it was a pleasure having you here, and you guys did a lot for the show. So thanks for that.
Yeah, those guys are awesome.
235 screen in the JTR room really had me questioning my 69 choice.
As should you.
I was like, I'm not gonna say anything, but you just let the cat out of the bag. Yeah,
Can I
I
speak
like
on
my
that?
235 screen too.
So,
Sheldon talked me into 235 screen. I wasn't gonna do it, so I owe that to you too.
dude, it is hard to talk you into anything, and I'm so proud of myself that I was able to do that. It took a lot of back and forth. But my take on that is go with whatever. If you want a really big screen, go with whatever way you're limited. So if you don't have real tall ceilings like myself and Jonathan, it just makes more sense if you want a big screen to go 235-1. If you've got a skinnier room and taller ceilings, which there's not as many of those, but I know they exist, then I probably would have gone 16.9. My big argument, and I was talking to a guy in the projector comparison room about this, and I think I turned him, but is I don't want to be watching the Chiefs game or a sports program or a TV show or anything like that, and then go to a movie and have the movie be smaller than the Chiefs game or smaller than whatever TV show I was watching. I want the big blockbuster movie, and the vast majority of those are 235-1. Almost everything I watch. If you don't watch a lot of animated or stuff like that, most of them are the 239-1. So that's something to keep in mind too. So there's my.
And I'll add a little bit. When you're height limited, as Sheldon said, we both are. My screen here is a 144-inch CinemaScope. That is equivalent to just a 116 16:9 by vertical height. But when you over zoom it to a CinemaScope, it's a 156-inch equivalent. So my content goes from being 116 16:9 to being equivalent to a 156 16:9, because the black bars, you're just ignoring those, right? They're cut off top and bottom. It's a lot bigger experience. I mean, think about the difference between 116 and 156. If it was a TV, it's a huge difference. So I'm thankful that you talked me into that, because I was like, I game too much. I'm not sure I want to do that little like adjustment back and forth. It's going to make me go to a more expensive projector that has lens memory and all that. And all that's water on the bridge when you see that just so much bigger image. It's like, yes, thank you.
I've also read that our eyes are better at seeing things from side to side than up and down. So, and I think that's true. Like, I feel like I'm the right distance when I'm watching 16:9, but I also feel like I'm the right distance at 235-1, even though it's so much bigger. Of course, the height hasn't changed. It's just the width, but the eyes seem to be able to adjust to that just fine. So, yeah.
All right. So we're continuing to go down here. Youth Band confirms he likes the CinemaScope screen. Oh, and Tony's talking about the panel on the Barco projector. We already kind of mentioned that. The 5K panel uses a wider resolution so that you do not have to over zoom to get that CinemaScope screen. It just has the extra pixels to use. And this guy's telling you, what? You got those giant cinema speakers in your room, Sheldon? And Sheldon's like, yes, I do.
Demo.
Uh-oh. He's calling you out. You don't have 18 18s. You have 16 18s.
I'm too short. Dang it. Call me out, Tony.
Michael says he's too tired. Go to bed, Michael. Go to bed. You've had a big weekend. Yeah, we're not
watch this garbage.
We're just blabbering at this point. I can't believe you guys keep posting. We need to quit. Let you all go to bed, and us too.
I don't work till August. I don't care.
School teacher luxury. All right. How many 20 amp circuits do you have to run all that, Sheldon?
Okay, so I have 1 amp that's powering my front 8 subs, and that has a dedicated 20 amp line. I have another amp that's powering my rear 8 18s, and that's on another dedicated 20 amp line. And then I have a 15 amp line that runs all of the little 12s, and then another 15 amp line that runs like the AVR and the computer and everything else that's back there. So,
yeah. Classic comment. He is a smart kickball teacher. He doesn't give himself some credit. Sheldon is the biggest tinkerer in Kansas City. Like, if you want to experiment with something or you want someone to experiment with you, he will be right there testing the in and out of every single thing, and his room really shows it. It's really well done. You're one of my favorite rooms of all of them that I've visited. I've been over 100 different enthusiast rooms. So hats off to you.
Buddy.
You know, you
Thanks.
don't act like you're just a kickball teacher when you can do what you can do. You can be a scientist and do all the experimentation you've done.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I love my room. Jonathan's is better.
Come on. For near field subwoofers, do they need good quality like the rest of the subs in the room? Yeah, they do.
Depends on, okay, one caveat with that. I need to go to Shelby's room. He's one of the crazy tactile, you know, he's got multiple 18s under each chair for his hover setup. And he's gotten to the point where he has so much SPL coming from under the seats that he doesn't even really turn on the traditional subs anymore. That's how crazy his setup has become. So I haven't experienced it, but he's pretty experienced. He knows his stuff, so I'll take his word for it. He's got a great, nice, smooth response and all that kind of stuff. So that would be interesting. But you talk about the edge of the hobby. He's at the edge, and then way further. You know, people think I'm crazy. He takes it to a much higher level. So yeah, evidently you can get enough SPL just from the near stuff if you have like 4 18s per chair.
So my answer to this one would be yes, you can't cheat it, because like I used, and I showed this on the Youth Man podcast, so I won't bother to get the sub. I have an Infinity Kappa Perfect 10 driver. It's probably this deep. It's got a magnet that's about this big on it. It's like the best 10-inch Infinity makes for car audio stuff. And I put that behind my seats because I didn't want these giant boxes back there, which would push my back row further. I was hoping, can I get by with a 10-inch driver? And unfortunately on the ground, but can I get by with a 10-inch driver? And within a week, I blew it up. And it didn't even have like half or even probably a third of the output of the 18. And it's doing all, and that's like a 1600 watt driver. It's not a little shabby 10. It's like a nice 10. The displacement of the driver wasn't to the same level as 18. Could I get by with 15? Probably, but you want that excursion, man. That near field feel is all about that cone displacement and that excursion and so forth. So to me, yeah, you want to have that. If you get a little cheapy sub that doesn't have any excursion, you're just not going to feel it that much, and it's all about the feel.
I misunderstood his question. I thought I was speed reading. I thought he meant, do you still need a quality far field sub if you have near field subs? That's why my answer may have sounded really weird. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
that's what happened.
Yeah. Okay, I see where you're going with that.
Yeah,
I don't disagree with your other answer if the question was going the other way. Okay, so this guy says the Pinnacles have 3 different port tunes because the speaker has 4 self-contained chambers. Yeah, we get it, Rick, but what we don't understand is how that doesn't cause any kind of phase alignment issues or distort. Like if you have a phase issue with your subs and port tunes at different frequencies cause phase issues, a lot of times that'll basically like null out the bass, cancel out the bass, so it either does weird peaky stuff or it just kind of like disappears. That's been my experience. Like if you try to mix different port tunes on different subs. So it's interesting that they could make that work. And I'd like to know more. I'm probably not even smart enough to understand it, but I'd like to know more about the engineering behind it, or how that actually works. And I could probably figure it out with OmniMic. Like you can do so much with real-time analysis, but I don't have one, and I don't know. Maybe I'm saying too smart to think that I could figure it out, but I want to play with it. I want to know more about it. I want to experiment. I'm interested. Okay, so here we go. This gentleman says, yes, but that makes IMAX screens larger than the movie, just like TV, but IMAX should be larger. Then you'd also don't have to deal with lens memories.
All right. I have more to say on that one.
Go ahead, shoot.
I've never understood the, like, ooh, IMAX. Ooh, okay, that's the same as my TV. That's a 16 by 9. I don't understand.
Nick's coming after you. IMAX is a different ratio than TV.
Oh, is
it? Truly.
It's not 16:9. What is it? Is
Nick, speak up here. Sir Master, I know you're on the forums. I know you're speaking in here.
Is it 185.1?
It's closer to a 4:3 in its native aspect, but they don't even do that in theaters because there's only a certain amount of theaters that are actually truly IMAX format. So they water it down.
4:3 was awesome on my parents' Zenith in 1975. That was 13-inch black and white. It was actually kind of widescreen because the black bars had crept in on that old piece of junk. So it was supposed to be 4:3, but it wasn't. I still come back to, I feel like we see better from side to side than we do up and down. So
Yeah.
That's just
What is
me.
Youth Man still doing on here?
Hey.
We're gonna have to shut this down so he'll go to bed.
He's got like 4 hours of sleep in the last 6 days.
Hey, we're almost caught up. When we get caught up, we're going to bed. So it's 11:42. This is 11:36 comment. We're almost there. Look, here's the stupid part. Before we started this with Sheldon, I said, let's just do 30 minutes or maybe it tops an hour. What are we sitting at there? 2 hours and 10 minutes? I told
Have
you
we really
this
been
just
going
goes
that
on
long?
it just goes on and on. People just keep asking questions. It's hard to catch up.
That's fun. I get it now. I've never done one of these, so I didn't know. Yeah.
I was like, we need an alarm and be like, 30 minutes has passed. We'll catch you next week.
Shut it down.
Okay, so here we go. What's this one say? With how few studios ship IMAX on 4K Blu-ray, it doesn't seem like something worth accounting for.
I hope it stays that way.
You know, one thing I wonder, what's our phone format? Our phone format is like super vertical, and there's shorts and stuff. There's all kinds of things starting to be published for our phones. Is that going to change the way we view movies? I mean, CinemaScope is like our phone this way, and now they're trying to do it this way. What's this going to do? Are we going to start having exclusive TVs that come out in this format soon?
The glasses Nick had us try the other night were awesome, and I hate them because they're going to destroy the future versions of them are going to destroy everything about our hobby.
Talk about that a little bit. Those were really cool.
Oh man, they were cool. So Nick had these glasses that simulate a OLED TV, like what did he say? Like a 48-inch OLED TV, or maybe it was, I don't know what he said, but you're like, yeah, sure. And you put them on, and they are awesome. And anywhere you turn your head, you're just seeing this huge, super sharp, great contrast image. And you shed a tear for the future of our hobby, because you know it's just going to get better and better and better.
And they're using OLED panels actually themselves too, so it's like OLED quality with that panel that's real close to your eyes. And did he show you the lock-in feature where you can affix it so when you look, it stays the same place?
I didn't see cool that. I mean, that sounds pretty cool. But the one I thought it was really cool how if you moved your head, it
follows you.
Yeah,
2 different ways to use it.
Crazy.
And then he showed you the 3D too. The 3D was cool. It's that you can do left and right frame basically.
The other guys had seen it. I didn't get back on for the 3D. I think I was too busy going back to get more drinks. But
my only complaint with that would be, and why I would not buy it in this iteration, is the motion was like old OLED motion, which was really stop frame-ish to my eyes.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's anywhere near as good as using something like this now, but you can see how it will become so.
I agree.
At some point, so.
I agree.
Yeah.
This gentleman's saying if you get an EV, you can just hook it up in your home theater. True Max, here's your IMAX ratio. Thank you for that.
My bad.
For this is 143.1. Uh-oh, and then you got someone correcting that guy. Scott, look at this. This is Scott.
That's Scott Simonian.
Yeah. Where's he been?
God.
With a wealth of knowledge.
I would recognize your front stage any day of the week. You may actually have his name on there. I don't. I just have the picture.
No, I know from a Youth Man podcast or from playing sometimes online with games with him that's the big show is his handle.
I know from him crashing on my couch at the 2017.
Oh, we like Scott. He's good people.
Oh, Scott's awesome. And he knows way more than I don't want to speak for you, but he knows way more than I do.
He can get that credit. He knows a lot. He's someone on the forum that you can go to and ask almost anything, and he's got the answer, or we'll get the answer for you. He's not on the forums actively anymore, but he used to be, and he used to be a great resource, and we still love him for it.
Yeah, for sure.
So here we got more confirmation. Okay, and Paul, we agree with you here, Paul. The largest you can go either way is the best advice. That's what Sheldon had initially said, and I think that's true too. If your room is narrow and real tall, then go a 16:9.
But I should also say preference is king on all of this stuff. So how am I going to tell somebody that they're wrong with what they like better? I mean, so people are thinking I'm a prick at this point.
But the one little caveat I'll give to that, Paul, is that shaky cam stuff looks different on a projector than it does on a TV. And if you're too close, it can be bothersome to you, especially until you get used to it. I think you do kind of get used to it but it may not always be the case that sometimes you hear, and I think Sheldon, you might agree with the premise that the biggest is always the best. Some people won't feel that way though, because shaky cam stuff can be kind of like almost make you nauseous if you're
Jason Bourne movies.
Yeah.
I can't do Jason Bourne movies
With
in
too
my
big.
front row.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So what has been overall expectation of Atmos? Has it reached the masses or just certain percentage? Do you watch most with Atmos? Atmos is the real deal, man. It's good. It's good stuff. We've talked about it for years, Sheldon. It's not like you can't enjoy a 7.1 system anymore. You absolutely can. In fact, I think sometimes 7.1 systems surprise you with how much almost like there feels like there's still ceiling content. Then I'll give you an example.
Phantom ceiling.
Somehow they're doing that. Yeah, well, like American Sniper. There's a sandstorm scene in there at the end where they're kind of shooting out from the roof. Do you remember that scene from that movie?
Yeah.
I started using that for a demo clip. I ripped the clip off my disc and I thought this is going to be a great one to show. And then just out of curiosity, I have ability to turn off my bed layer and just listen to my ceiling heights alone because of the way my amps are configured. There's nothing. There is nothing coming out of the ceiling speakers during that sandstorm except for the occasional bullet. There's no wind howling. There's no sand rattling. And when you're sitting in the main listening position or anywhere else, it sure sounds like there is.
Yeah.
So,
well, you remember back in the day with the Master and Commander where there's people running on the deck above you in the ship?
Yes.
Nobody had Atmos back then.
That wasn't Atmos, and it sure did sound like they were right overhead, didn't it?
Didn't exist. But having said that, some of the better ones, it truly, and the stuff that's really coming from and it doesn't have to be ceiling. Atmos doesn't necessarily just mean ceiling, but yeah, they are really amazing. What's frustrating is so many movies don't use it to its full extent what they should do. There's some that do, but most don't. So that is frustrating. But I do like upmixing everything. If it's 5.1, 7.1, upmixing everything to for movies, I usually use the Neural X mixer, and like we said before, the Dolby mixer. So I do love having it, and I wouldn't go back. But it's not like you can't have a great 5.1, 7.1 setup. So yeah, both things are true.
So this gentleman's going to see an IMAX on the 70 millimeter film based IMAX experience. There's only a few theaters in the United States that have that. I think we have one in Missouri down in Branson, maybe, where it's still truly film. It's not digital.
Nothing in KC, huh?
No. I've never actually seen that myself. I don't recall doing that. Certainly not on purpose. I would like to try it sometime.
I'm going to see it on Thursday at the IMAX. Ironically, since I claim that I don't like IMAX.
All right, so we're nearing the end. Let's get down here. No, I agree with you, Rick. He hates the fact that film directors are using multiple formats of the movie. The switching is really an annoyance on our CinemaScope.
Just use your masks. Just use the mask feature and you won't even care or notice. You won't notice that you're not missing. Like with Top Gun or any of these other movies, I just have my mask system set up, fill the full scope screen, mask it in. You never know. It's good to go.
For those who run Mad VR, doesn't the linear stretch essentially cut off the top and bottom of the image when the IMAX clips are being shown? I'm not sure linear stretch does that, but there is functionality within Mad VR to do that. Linear stretch is more used to fill up the black bar area, right, with the content. So you can take your image and stretch the top and bottom of the image a little bit and kind of choose your ratios if you want 40% or whatever and kind of stretch that out, fill it in. I'm not sure
that's how it works, but I don't have much experience with Mad VR, so I don't.
Andy B, that's a great question for Ryan of Ascend Audio on the Youth Band podcast. He's a Mad VR rep. He's one of the customer service agents and knows that product really well. I've not had a whole lot of hands-on experience with it. I'm very impressed with it. Ryan's room with the NZ9 at Mad VR is simply the best projected image I've ever seen. Even at MWAVE, it was because they didn't. At least I didn't see a Mad VR with NZ9, and that's just a knockout combo.
Yep.
Okay, so we're back more on the aspect ratio comments. This gentleman says, let's back to Scott. The problem with Atmos is the codec is excellent, but the delivery of great Atmos mixes is few and far between.
That's what I'm saying.
But when they hit, man.
Yep.
Blade Runner 2049 and
Scott's right.
Gravity.
Pretty much anything by Disney is going to be lackluster for the most part. But
so Nick is saying that Branson is dual laser, not film. All right, I had that wrong. Branson is not a film-based one. All right, so but he says it is the native ratio, so at least you're getting the right aspect ratio. And then he says that he and Tony are driving 4 hours to visit a true film-based for Oppenheimer. So yeah, that's cool.
sweet.
I wish you guys, either Nick and Tony, need to move to Kansas City. Yeah, we're not moving up there. We got too many other guys down here. You guys got to move down here.
Agreed.
All
We'll get right on that.
The Des Moines used to have 70 millimeter IMAX at the Science Center, but a flood several years shut it down, and they never brought it back. That's a shame.
I'm sure we know this guy. We know a lot of Des Moines guys.
I don't recognize his handle, but we might have met him in a meet because we've been to plenty of meets up in Des Moines.
Yeah.
All right, so Nick's saying that MadVR cuts it off a little bit when it's doing that stretching configuration. We're getting close, man. All right, so here, this is a good way to end it. Because this podcast was meant to be about MWAVE, and here's someone saying that they had a great time at MWAVE. JTR room was fantastic. Producing and Barco room was good too. I'm going to go ahead and modify that comment because I thought it was good too. JTR JVC room knocked out of the park. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, there we go. So this was one of the guys on the Discord channel, Mitch TV Man. I've seen him post on the MWAVE Discord channel quite a bit. Fellas, thanks for joining us tonight. We did not expect to have 40 people plus. I think there was 44 at the highest I saw. I'm just a small-time YouTuber, so thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. Thanks for helping me, Sheldon. The intent was just to talk about MWAVE and get a little bit of press out there because it's such a good event. We wanted to share the love with Michael and Ryan and just say, thanks, guys, for the fantastic experience and kind of share some good wishes and some fun that we had.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sleep well tonight, my friend. Thanks for joining me.
All right. See you, Jonathan.
Right. Good night, everybody.
Later.